Welcome to the Logosphere. This is Chris Stites, here as always with JD Roof.
Hello, good evening.
And this evening we have the extraordinary pleasure of having with us the unusual, enigmatic, celebrity unknown,
I like that.
Mikey V.
I like that one.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Mikey. So Mikey and I go way back. I've known Mikey for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And helped me out when I was a real young pup.
He looked like this 20 years ago?
He didn't have the beard.
Mm.
You didn't. No, you weren't bearded out.
Tattoos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
The tattoos, for
A
sure.
lot of tattoos.
Yeah. But, yeah, when I was struggling with addiction as a young pup, he was a guy that a lot of dudes down in Orange County really looked up to, like big time. He touched us in a way. Everybody remembers you.
Yeah.
And it's not from an ego thing. It's just the love you kind of put out to like the guys that were struggling. And, you know, we all want a piece of that, you know,
Right.
and we want to admit it ourselves. So that was a big turning point for me in my early sobriety, because I was self-will run riot, just a nutbag. And seeing a guy like you and really, I mean, the tattoos do help. Like they, you know, I'm not as tattooed as you are, but you know what I mean? Like that signal to a young guy that's struggling, you know, it's cool, you know, to a younger guy. And there was a huge group of us that were like Mikey V followers, basically, you know, not followers, but you know, we wanted what you had, you know, and you were never my sponsor or anything, but still like we became good friends. And, yeah, part of the reason we wanted to get you out here, because I wanted to find out. So the first question I'm going to open with, because you do a lot of spiritual meditation and different practices. There was a period in your life that you went to India, right? And like, so what can you frame that for us? Like, what happened? Like, what did you learn there? What was your experience?
Well, I say I had 2 tours in India already. You know, once I went up to northern India, and you know, I didn't know anything. I went by myself, so I was like, I had no agenda, and I got there, and then I put this whole thing together, and of going all over the place. I bought train tickets and bus tickets and blah blah blah. And then the country at the time, India was having problems with money, so the 500 rupee and the 1,000 rupee got discontinued, and I was carrying about $2,000 in that currency, right? And I never forget, I'm in Rishikesh, and I like go to the bank, and the banks in India are like, I mean, there's no lines. You know what I mean? There's 500 people waiting to get to one guy behind the counter, and all you could exchange was at the time was like 500 rupees, which was maybe would have been $40. I don't even remember how much it was, but it you know, it hours on end, and everybody's so nice, like you know, and so I was in Rishikesh, and I went up to Dharamsala because I wanted to go see where the Dalai Lama lived and stuff. And I never forgot, I was sitting in a coffee shop, and you know, I was smoking beedies at the time. I mean, as soon as I land in India, all of a sudden I love beedies. You know what I mean? I just want to smoke those things like they're going out of season. And this old timer from England sits down next to me, and you know, he lights up a beedie, and we're drinking. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, you know, I'm in a 12-step program in England, and
Wow.
I'm out here to write my 4th step. I was like, oh, that's cool. I go, yeah, I'm in a 12-step program too. And you know, he was 20 years older than I was, and we just went on a cruise that day. We went and looked at temples, and we talked recovery. And you know, it was really cool. Like, it was just like one of those, like, you know what I mean? You're in India, there's millions of people, and here's this one guy that I sit down to at a coffee shop, you know, that was kind of struggling, and I was able to hang out with them and talk, you know. And then the next morning, I wake up, and it's like there's no money in the ATMs. Everybody that's a tourist is panicking. And I go back to the room. I'm not feeling that good, and I'm like, you know what? What is the fastest way to get to the airport? When I look at this overnight, you know, this bus, like we get to the airport the next day, so I take a bus straight to the airport. And I go up to the counter. I'm like, what's the closest place I can fly to? They're like, Bangkok, Thailand. I'm like, I'll take that. And I get a hotel room. I had a big beard at the time, and I literally got this little hotel room at the airport. I shaved down, and then I got these gnarly spiritual practices going. I'm vegan, I am smoking some beaties, but I'm like really disciplined. And I'm like, next thing I know, I'm in Thailand, and it's like, okay, Pinocchio arrived. You know what I mean? It's like
the underworld.
Yeah, I'm eating chicken and fish, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm tan in 4 days, and I mean, it was like the complete opposite of the spiritual trip, and so I stayed there for a couple weeks. I had a great time, and then I came back, and a few years later, it was probably, I don't know, 5-6 years later, I was really into this sage. His name's Sri Ramana Maharishi.
Okay.
And he lived in Arunachala on this mountain in these caves. And I had this pool. I was reading his work, and I was like, you know what? I got to go to India, now. And literally, within a week, I got a ticket. I get down to the airport, and I'm about ready to fly out. And they're like, sorry, sir, you can't get on the plane. I go, what are you talking about? You need a visa. You can't just fly to India. I'm like... So I couldn't go to India that day, and I had to wait 4 days, and I rushed the visa, and so I get over to India, and I never forget this. I land in Chennai at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And it's just, if you haven't been to India, it's insane, right? And so I'm looking, and there's 50,000 taxi drivers, and I get this one taxi guy, and I'm like, can you take me to Arunachala? Oh yeah, no problem. I get in this, I follow him, I get in this little Toyota Corolla, and I swear to God, the guy was about 3'8". He had one hand, and he had this stick thing that was sticking out of the I don't even know what it was. It was this shifter, and it was pouring rain, and this guy did about 110 miles an hour. I mean it was an insane trip, 4 hours at high speed, and I'm in the back saying every prayer. And then as soon as we got to one mark, and I'm like, can you pull over? And I ran and got a pack of beaties. You know what I mean? I'm just full beatie smoking again, And I got there, landed, and, this is a whole, kind of where my life shifted, and that's why I'd say the story really quick. I got there, and the minute I, got the hotel, and I woke up, and I went right to this ashram, and I walked right up this hill, and I walked right into these caves where this great sage sat for, he sat in one cage for 15 years, another one for 11 years. You walk in, there's all these Westerners there, and everyone's sitting around meditating, and I just sat down, and I just got this ease and comfort that was just phenomenal. It was just grounded. I was like, oh, I just flew all the way over to here just to do this. And it was such an amazing experience. And little did I know that week was kind of like the spiritual rock star week. Amma was on tour. Have you ever heard of Amma?
The hugging saint?
The hugging saint was there.
Muji. Wow. Did you get a hug?
I have before, but I didn't there. Muji was there. He had his whole satsang with him. He had a whole crew of people with him.
At the mountain there? Or the hill?
Well, in
the ashram?
In Tiruvamuli.
Okay. So the greater area there that it's in?
Yeah, the greater area. So there's the ashram and the sacred mountain, which is Arunachala. Then Tiruvamuli is the little city right there. And so there's some other saints there, the traveling saints that week. And I went and saw Muji, and I think I lasted maybe 10 minutes inside that satsang,
Why?
It was a very, is it kind? The tongue has 3 gatekeepers, right? Is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? The vibe was so really weird. These women are walking up, falling on the stage, crying at his feet.
Wow.
A lot of theater?
Huh?
A lot of theater?
A lot of theater, heavy duty.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting next to a guy, and I take my phone out, and he's like, you can't have your phone here. And I was like, are you security? I mean, and I just kind of looked at him, I looked at the vibe, I'm like, I'm out of here. And prior to going in there, I was out and I met a couple of his disciples, let's say, right? And the first thing they ask you is, who's your guru? I said, I don't have a guru. What do you mean you don't have a guru? I said, I am the guru.
It's like going down to South Central and they want to know who you're connected to.
Exactly.
Are you Blood or a Crip?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Who's your guru? And I'll go, it's just like Sri Ramana Maharishi said across the street. We are the incarnation of God. We are our own guru. Who am I? You know, I don't need someone to look up to. I am already one with the Creator, you know? And they're just looking at me like, oh. And anyway, I went to the
But you don't speak Indian, right? You don't speak the languages of that area, right? But does everybody speak English, or is it?
Yeah, a lot of people speak. Yeah,
Yeah,
English is almost a second language there. You know.
Oh, really? Yeah, probably because of the British Empire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They did a lot of control.
Yeah.
So anyway, all these things are going on. I go back up, and I just every morning I'm up the hill, sitting in these caves, meditating, and this is what happened to me. Like, is I'm sitting there, and I swear, I'm probably in an hour meditation, and I have this download in my own consciousness that was so real I can't even explain it. Like, literally, this vision came into me, and I pictured a desert, and I pictured all these buildings like pyramids and temples, and like this place in California that I need to go home and build. Like, literally, like, it was so real to me. And I've never had experienced anything at that level. You know, I've had some other crazy meditation experience, but this one was like a download, you know? It's like, basically, you don't need to come to India anymore. Go do your own thing. Like, do it at home and do it with your kind of people,
Right.
you know? And then that night, I did a thing where you walk around the entire mountain, and I was just filled with this radiance and joy that was like I knew. And prior to that, maybe 5 years prior, and it had to be in the desert. It was in the desert. And prior to that, like 5 years, I was at work, and I look at this bid thing. I'm looking at desert property, and something came up for bid. I ended up just buying 2.5 acres out in the middle of the desert. I didn't even know where it was or anything. So I already bought land in the desert, not even knowing why I bought the land.
Wow.
And then this thing hit me, and so, you know, where I'm at today, but, you know, that's a whole nother kind of dialogue. But, you know, it was so real to me. Like, I do not doubt that thing. I know if any fear in my own conscience, when I came home, and fear of money, or fear of how am I going to do it, or fear of this is not real, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, because I would have believed those things. And I didn't believe that. I believe it was literally from the Creator guiding me, saying, do this. This is your mission.
What do you think about this? There's probably a lot of people who travel a really long distance to that particular area.
Right.
And they're invested in having an experience. You know, do you see people that are putting it on, that are, you know, they can't leave without their gift bag, which is a spiritual experience they're going to get? Like, you know, they're going to get it or else, one way or another, whether it's real or not, or they just think they do, or they portray that they have. Is there that sort of temptation in an area like that after a trip like that?
Well, I like that question in a sense, because it's kind of a twofold. Is that I've gone to a lot of places that are on the spiritual trip, different ashrams, different lineages, different gurus, and I always trip out in a sense. Is that I feel like if you're on the spiritual trip, like, I just feel like everyone should be kind and loving. I feel like everyone should be welcoming. Hey, how are you? Like, and I find there's always a block there, you know, and like at that mountain walking up, I mean, here's a Westerner. I don't know where they're from, but, you know, I would say good morning to people. I mean, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking up a hill to go meditate. I'd say good morning, and they just ignore you. And I'm like, aren't we on the, like, aren't we doing the same thing here? Yeah. Like, and so it's almost like I'm so overly sensitive to people's reactions sometimes, is that I feel like there was this other higher, you know, there's a book called Ashrams, and it talks about, you know, there's these planes, right? And so wherever this plane downloaded from, it's like, you know, to me, it's this higher consciousness or this higher power saying to you, like, you need to go do your journey. You need to go help the people that you relate to.
Yeah, do you have a theory why a particular geographical location could produce?
Well, the desert, I mean, anything on the spiritual trip from the Essenians to, you know, early Christianity,
Jesus, right?
Gnosticism. Jesus.
Time in the desert.
Yeah, the
Moses.
desert.
It's Moses.
Yeah.
It's all the desert's always had that vastness of spiritual trips. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's just pure silence, but it's not like alive. You know, but it's got this feeling to it, like you're just in this zone of space,
Emptiness.
complete emptiness. You know, and yeah, I've been on the beach my whole life. I've been surfing my whole life. Like I've lived on the coast for 40 years. I mean, for me to be in the desert is already kind of trippy, you know?
Yeah.
But the desert, I think there is that calling where it's like, it's a deeper, it gets you deeper of an understanding for yourself when you're in that level of silence, you know?
And to be at the ashram there in the cave where he sat for a decade or more, or whatever happened, what influence do you think that has on you?
Well, India already has this. I mean, India is so old and has so much mysticism and spirituality. Like, it's just everywhere you look. I mean, before even the Christian Bible or even any of the Buddhist scriptures, like the Bhagavad Gita and all the early Hinduism stuff, that's 5,000 years old.
You think that's just woven into the landscape
it's
there?
In the culture. I mean, it's in the energy of the air.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have so much extreme suffering and sadness at the same time.
Poverty and overpopulation and just chaos.
I mean, you got a temple that's all gold, that's adorned with so much beauty, and then you have children outside that are homeless. Like it for the mind, it's very powerful. It like puts you in an awe. You're like, let's melt the gold and feed the kids. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't work that way. And their culture.
Are you familiar with the term Advaita Vedanta?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, if it depends on Advaita Vedanta, what lineage we're going to talk about, right? Like Ramakrishna, which would be the Vedanta Society, right?
What does Vedanta mean? Yeah.
To me?
Yeah.
It's a non-duality,
Mm-hmm.
it's a separation from self, let's say, but there's a lot, it's a very vast word,
Mm-hmm. Non-duality in general is a difficult thing to understand, if maybe not impossible to really understand rationally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea that we live in a world of duality, everything has an up and a down or a good and a bad, and the idea that there might be a deeper truth that is beyond that. Something like that. This non-dual, it seems like almost levels to a lot of traditional religions. Even Christianity, right, it starts to get into Gnosticism, and there's certain more mystic sects where it starts to become more non-dual. Do you consider yourself as someone who practices non-duality? Does that even make sense as a question?
Well, if in spiritual practices, let's say, it's about disciplines, right? It's about sitting and meditating or chanting or doing yoga and stuff like that. And it's getting out of self, right? We're trying to separate the mind that's attached to this body. I'm Mikey V. I think I'm this. I think this is all real, But when I can get out of self and go beyond that, I realize the attachment to this little bodysuit I'm in is just a phase of the journey, And the non-duality, right, it's a game that all of us play on a daily basis. We attach the identity. We think we're this. This is real to us. You're JD. It's like we think, but in true spiritual terminology, right, we're not what we think we are. We're these spiritual beings that came down, and we're in this very low frequency vibrational state, which is where we're at.
Would you say we're never what we think we are?
Would say we're never?
That we're never, no matter what we think we are, we're still something a bit behind that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
But the journey, most of us would never get to a point to even ask that question.
Yeah. How do we get to that point?
Yeah.
Suffering?
I think that you have you hit forks in the road. There's turning points, right?
Because a lot of people don't even consider this stuff, right? They just, the American dream, and it's like, what job can I get?
Yeah,
and,
consumerism.
You know, did you watch X, Y, and Z last night?
Yeah, right.
And they're happy enough with that. You imagine there's some nagging existential dread that's just, you know, that they're able to just keep in their back pocket, and it doesn't catch up with them enough that they have to go sit in a cave for 10 years.
And you know what? Some people are perfectly fine with that journey. You know what? You
God
work
bless
all
them.
week. You go to the baseball game or football game. You buy the wife a new car. You know what I mean? You join the Elks Club. You know, it's like you go to church on Sundays.
Right.
You know, you listen to doctrine that you really know nothing about. You just hear it. You know.
You check all the boxes.
Yeah.
You check it all.
Yeah.
You profess a belief.
Right. You believe this is. I'm so believe this is it. This is the truth. You know. I mean, even for me, I can't even. The character that I'm sitting in, I mean, the different characters I've played in this role to where I'm at today, like they're all like stage, like they're actors.
Mm-hmm.
Like different chapters.
Yeah, the skateboard guy or the surfer or the motorcycle guy. Like, I literally
Mikey V from San Fran, brother.
Right.
Yeah.
I wore costumes like the jean vest and the flip hat.
Yeah,
it's like I literally played parts, and I really believe that was really me.
And is this another part?
The part now is the non-attachment to, you know, is desires, is becoming, the more we become desireless, right, to what the five senses would want, right, the more we become desireless, then another deeper understanding comes that is like way beyond anything I even know still, you know. I just, you know, I've joked sometimes. I've said I wish I didn't even awaken. Because it's so easy to just be in the void, the numbness. Like, but if you pop out of this thing and it's like you get that deep breath and you're like, wow, I really believe everything was real. Like, I really believed every part I played was real.
Your process of awakening, was there a line in the sand? Was it there in India when you had that download? Has it just been a series of, you know, has it been an ego death, like, is it, you know, by 1,000 cuts?
You know, the second divorce, children, and the homes, and the hot rods, and the motorcycle, everything kind of going away again, and left with myself.
And you're sober at this time?
Yeah.
Like, long-term sobriety when the second divorce happened, and you were well into...
I was well into 17 years.
Okay.
In a 12-step program, and I had hurt my back and started taking prescription medication, you know, from Dr. Sugarman, and his name was Dr. Sugarman, you know, and he prescribed everything under the sun at that time.
Was this the guy in Orange County?
No, this guy was in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
Those are the good old days, huh?
Oh, I mean,
These doctors?
He's great. I mean, I was...
You get whatever you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to him. I was like, I have 2 herniated discs. He's like, well, here's 3 refills of 150 10-660 Norcos. You take 10 of those a day. You eat a couple Tramadols. Here's a sleeping pill, and then take these muscle relaxants in between work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like doctor prescribed. You know, and I'm still in 12-step programs, like working with guys and speaking and sponsoring. And it's like I'm completely out of my mind. I don't even know it. You know, I'm immersed in recovery, and I don't even realize. You know, it has nothing to do with him. I'm doing what he's telling me to take. But what happened was there's this little line here. It just got cut off. You know, like I was back in this again. This was running the show.
Did you see yourself get in there? It was just, again, it's like the invisible line goes.
Invisible.
And there you are. You don't even know you're in it again.
Didn't even know it.
Yeah, back on autopilot, just daydreaming.
Didn't even know it. I heard some guy on a Sunday, second meeting of day of a 12-step, and I had a newcomer with me. And this guy's up there, and he's like, yeah, I had 7 years, 7 years sobriety. He's like, hurt my back, and I started taking prescription medication. He goes, I am such a violent drunk. He goes, I am so scared to drink, but he goes, I was taking the medicine like it was no problem. He goes, and I stepped over an invisible line with it. And I was sitting in that meeting going, that's you. I never want to drink again. I mean, when I drink, these little 3-inch horns just go.
How did that
It's gnarly.
How did that realization strike you? Were you struck with terror? Was there a bit of freedom there? Did you know that there was now something for you to have to walk through that you weren't quite ready for, and there was some sort of resistance to it?
No, it was like a,
Yeah.
and then what happens is because myself built this persona ego in this 12-step thing of like,
Yeah, I remember when I got the
got
call
all this
that Mikey V
time.
relapsed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Mhm.
oh yeah, it was
It was
like
gnarly.
like full ego deflation.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was
just
like
smashed.
people are just like, oh, well,
Yeah.
people don't even know what to say to me. Like, you did what? Or like, I just heard you speak last month at a podium thing. I was like, yeah. And but what happened when the ego gets that deflated, and this was so good for me. And the time, the guy that I was working with, my spiritual advisor, he called it a therapeutic relapse. Like, my ego was so big, and there was so much materialism, like just so much. And I got deflated again. And then after I deflated myself, though, to say I was new again, that's when the illness, I suffered from alcoholism. So when that hit me, next thing I know, I'm back in the bar, and I never forget this. I sat down, and I ordered 4 Bloody Marys, 6 Bud Talls, and 2 shots of Jack.
And you didn't want that until you said I'm new again?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that...
Oh, yeah, because the ego's deflated. I'm like, you already let go. You might as well...
You lost your, your trophies.
Oh, yeah, the trophy's gone. Like, you know what I mean? The badge is gone. And I looked at the... It was all on the counter. And I looked around the bar, and I'm going through a divorce. The kids are gone. And I said, you know what? That guy's probably going to get a bottle in his forehead just the way he's, like, just communicating next to me. That guy, like, I knew
Played
that
it all out.
I had so much anger in me and so much... It would have been a disaster. And I just walked out of there.
Wow. You've told me this story before.
Yeah, and it's the real deal.
Never
Yeah.
took a drink.
For an alcoholic, I mean, that is...
To get that close?
That close.
Yeah.
And your ego's so deflated. And that is, that's God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. There was that little tiny voice in the back of the head that said, Mike, you might kill somebody tonight. Because I was a violent alcoholic, and I did hurt a lot of people when I was practicing. And that little voice just said, don't do it. And I walked out, and then, I did a series of actions. And that was, that was almost 11 years ago. And that's what opened this door for the spiritual trip for me, let's say. Because the one thing I never did is in the 12 steps, I call it, it's called two-stepping. I was really good knowing I was an alcoholic, and I'm really great at helping people. But you know what I didn't do is I never enlarged my spiritual life.
Enhance your spiritual life.
Never did.
Yeah.
And I never learned how to meditate. Like, that is the second part of one of those steps, thought through prayer and meditation, improve our conscious contact with God as we understand him.
So India and all this stuff is post that experience?
That was after.
Yes. Before that, you weren't into
I wouldn't
any
go
of
to
this?
India if you gave me 2 tickets
Yeah.
free with a hotel and a rent-a-car, for a month. I would have been like, I'll blow the country up before
What kind
I
of
go over
experience
there.
with meditation did you have before?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, I laughed at it.
Yeah.
I laughed at it all, my joke was, well, if the room gets quiet, that's meditating, It's like... I had no clue, but I preached God from the top of my lungs, and I really did. I felt like I had a connection with a God of my understanding, but it wasn't.
You did, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you did help a lot of people. You
Oh,
helped
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're a good pointer for,
Yeah.
screwed up guys that are trying to get their life together, for
I
sure.
got on my knees every day and
Yeah,
prayed,
yeah.
and throughout the day I would pause when agitated, and I would ask God for guidance.
Right.
But I never
Really enhance your spiritual.
enhanced it.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with these terms like jnana or bhakti or bhakta or karma? I'm not an expert on it, but I've had this understanding that, like, through the yoga paths, there's these different kind of ways of hitting it. There's the way of knowledge, which would be like jnana or gnosis, and then there's of devotion. There's some people that find God by being a good person and by interfacing with the world and trying to live in moral ways and being self-sacrificing in that way. There's people who are very helpful to others. There's a compassionate sort of approach to things, and then there's the meditative approach, which is to go deep within yourself. And the 12-step trip kind of like covers a lot of those bases.
Right.
But it seems like some people really pick a lane and hit it hard. What do you think about that?
I think that the number one thing for all of us, no matter if you're a 12-step program or not, is service. You know, if we can get out of self, you know, I mean.
So do you think sitting in a cave for 10 years is abdicating this responsibility to be of service?
I think the renunciation is almost an escapism from reality, because we live in this society, and it's being part of the society. To escape from it and go join a monastery or or become a monk.
What do you think about these dudes? There's like asceticism that becomes like an Olympic sport. I've seen like guys that have they'll have like cages installed over their like heads so they can never lay down, and like and walking on the road and just looking to make sure you never step on a bug because you can never harm another thing, and these sort of vows of poverty, and do you see that get to a level where it becomes perverse, or is it really beautiful to see the people that can just take it as far as they can, and there's something very like holy and interesting and mystical about that devotion to something that's so painful?
Well, that's what's so cool about India. I just think that, in the States here, right, we worship these people who made a movie, and we sat down and watched it and paid money for it, and we think that's like a celebrity, which is, to me, is absolutely ridiculous. But, I mean, no one's a celebrity. Everyone's
It's like a false idol.
It's
like,
complete false idol.
Yeah.
But in India, it's like, here's these people that renounce everything. You have guys that are like, there's one guy that are for 19 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's bones, You have the Gori Babas, which, they smoke hash all day long because Shiva smoked hash. And they, they have dreadlocks, and they literally go to the where they burn the bodies, and they take the sacred ash and rub themselves in the sacred ash, and they walk around. And some of them, they only carry a skull, and they eat their dinners out of these skull heads. Like, it's just full on everything.
That's gnarly.
But they're fully into God.
Yeah.
It's just like they're renouncing everything. And that's the thing what's cool about India is the rock stars are all these spiritual people. You have tons of enlightened beings. They're not just a handful. I mean, there's an enlightened being on every corner.
Wow.
And you have all different ways to get to God, right? Like you said, the bhakti and jnana. There's all kinds of, I went to school for Kundalini yoga for 9 months, and it was taught by a teacher that I won't mention his name because I don't respect that teacher in Kundalini. And he harmed a lot of people. He's passed away now, but he harmed a lot of people. So I don't respect him as a lineage. But I did go to school for his Kundalini, and what I learned in Kundalini is that, there is all these really cool practices with breathing and these kriyas and the stretching and the chanting. And all that stuff is like, it's all devotion to God. Everything's devotion to God. It's not for the ego. It's not to be cool. I mean, it's done, like my stuff's done with no one around. Like, I do it by myself in the morning.
You're not posting like an Instagram video of it.
I don't have social media. I don't have, it's like, and, but where did that calling come from? Like you said, I'm not doing it to make a video out of it. I'm doing it because those levels of discipline, there's something about them for, ages they've been doing it. And there's something about these practices that gets us in a deeper awareness of who we are, like on a whole different level, like on a deep spiritual level. And then you have that, there's that realization, like, is this really, am I really who I think I am? Who am I?
That's what is it? Atma Vichara? Is that this sort of self-inquiry? I know that you mentioned the particular sage and that lineage. There's that sort of simple spiritual practice. You can kind of cut out all the fat.
Yeah.
And this just simply asking yourself the question, who am I?
Right.
And diving into it.
Yeah.
Personally, not taking anyone else's answer, really finding out for yourself.
Because that's what you find is that the more you go deeper into all these practices, the only one that's ever going to have the answers is you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can learn all the knowledge you want. You can learn all the lingo you want. You can learn all this stuff that seems cool visually. But the more you go deeper into the practice for yourself, the understanding is that self-inquiry, which is the self-awakening, where you're like, okay, I can read this stuff about these guys that, write all these great spiritual books. You can read that and you're like, oh, wow, I can really relate to that. He's not just saying this to sell a book. He's selling it because he's had the experience of it, I mean, it's I was in a meditation once, and honestly, I was doing this divine science, which is kind of a Christian mysticism, right? I was really into the Christian mysticism at the time, and I still am now lately more than ever, but I came literally face to face with Christ on a cross, and I saw him. We were like face to face. I saw the blood dripping out his eyes. I mean, it was so real. It scared me. It scared me. I literally.
Now, this meditation, like, do you get your body to that point? Like, it's like breathing, like gnarly, or
no? This was just a silent sit.
Oh, really?
Just an hour, 60-minute sit, just sitting there and
focusing on anything,
nothing,
or
just eyes closed. I mean, the level of the mind slows down where there is no thoughts. It's just a blank void.
Was there anything about this particular sit that brought a vision of Christ?
I don't even know. It was so heavy. Like, I don't even. But what was so crazy about that, it freaked me out so much that I came out of it, right? And I had a little pray-do in the corner, which is those little kneelers with a pad on it. And I walked over to this pad and I knelt down, and I swear it was like a flash. Like, like you're looking at a screen, it just flashes images. I watched every near-death experience flash in front of my eyes. Like, all the times I should have been dead. And I just sat there and I wept for like 30 minutes. That was so real. I mean, it was so real, I can't even explain it. And I just was in like awe. Like, why? What do you keep me around for? Like, why me? What did I do that, And, the more I think about it, it's to be of service, to help people,
You brought up something earlier that caught my attention. This idea of a therapeutic relapse. It's a controversial topic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I've had my own.
Right.
And it's tough because you never want to encourage someone necessarily to do that. But there are certain consequences in a positive sense that can come from experiences like that. I think about like a forest fire, how just every once in a while you just got to let that motherfucker burn, and it becomes overgrown. It just becomes dysfunctional, and sometimes a real cleansing in a destructive way can be so so bountiful or productive. Or
well, let's if you've been around for some time in 12-step programs, and it would sound like a judgmental kind of a comment, but look at some of these guys with some very long-term sobriety, and this would be, you're looking at the outside shell. Physically, they have let their temple, right? They've let the temple go. They are preaching really good, solid messages that are knowledge from the book that's regurgitated. They're still out there smoking. They're probably gambling. They might be cheating on their wives or having affairs. They're still lustful. I mean, it's like this spiritual life, if they say it's not a theory, like we must live it, like it's in all our actions. The way that we, and what happens is some of the, the reality is people do blow their heads off in the game because they don't want to drink again. They don't want to drink, but life is really, they're struggling. And that's a scary place to be,
Yeah, sometimes too many plates just get in the air and we don't know how to drop them. There's too much pride. This idea we got to save our face and our ass. We can't do both. We're not going to do either.
Yeah.
And the more time we have, the more the more sort of calcified and rigid that facade gets, and how we could become more attached to it. Like, how can we let it fall? How can we let it fall?
Well, if you look at the, just the introduction of your name, we're anonymous, right? You just say your first name. You don't need to say what your last name was. And, look at, I heard a great thing on that, but it's like, there it is again. There's the ego needs to build up this persona character. I'm Jim Jones, and, I've been blah, 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 blah. And again, is it not the true self underneath all that really wants to come out and be, the true identity? But it's not. We build characters in this game. As I say, you build characters.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like you said earlier, it's like, well, is this just a phase of the acting? And it's like, I mean, if you told me I was going to be out in the desert building temples or building like meditation things 10, 15 years ago, I would laugh at you. I mean, even today, it's so crazy. But I realize that nothing, and I'll step back one. You kind of have to sometimes in the game, right? Sometimes you need to, I love David Dita, The Way of a Superior Man. I don't know if you guys have read that. And no. David Dita, I do. I really love that book. But he says, sometimes you got to get married. You got to have kids. You got to go through divorce. You got to get the car, the job, the career, all this stuff. And he goes, when that all fails you, then you get down to full-time meditation. Mm-hmm. And that is my experience. I've had all of it. I've had multiple homes. I've had multiple wives. I've had multiple toys. I've had a lot of money. It's all failed me. Everything. Mm. The only thing that has not failed me is spiritual disciplines.
Maybe you just didn't do it good enough.
Oh, I agree. I
agree.
I should have
not. Maybe you just need to try harder.
I should have bought a Jetta.
Don't
right?
give up, Mikey.
I didn't need a 65 Malibu station wagon. I could have just got a Volkswagen Jetta, like lowered down.
Yeah. Just tone it down a little bit, dude. Don't just like throw in the whole towel.
Well, you get to a point though where it's all fake. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy part. Mm-hmm. But you have to have it first. You
do.
If you've had any money,
sometimes I look at like celebrities, really wealthy people, and the idea of just being able to have anything, it's terrifying. Just all of a sudden, just all value, this perceived value is just, where is it? Like, what does it matter anymore? These things, like to have a
it's
a
like
watch or car, or all this stuff that would be so fantastic for me to have because I'm in this relative poverty, compared to what things could be. But if it was just there, if you just have it, if it was just given to you.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's like,
it's bad. Well, what's that show, When the Lottery Destroyed My Life? Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fascinating show.
Yeah, they're all bankrupt in 3 years.
Right, or they're dead.
Yeah.
A lot of them die.
Right.
Because they just suddenly have $50 million or
the burden of celebrity is interesting. Like, as well, and even within the spiritual paths, you talk about the rock stars in India being, these spiritual types, and even here, I think that we all, if we're living a spiritual life, if we're in recovery, there's this tendency to all sort of, become our own little gurus, to develop our own little mentors, to have our own style, to then start to be our own, to have our own, whatever, rhetoric, our own story, our own brand, and then we, like, as much hard as we try, it's so easy to get sucked into this kind of reputational building, and then you see all these stories too of these these preachers that there's these really well-intentioned movements that people are really drawn to and beautiful things are happening, and then it just gets corrupt.
Like Joel Osteen or some of these guys, and
then it just all the life gets sucked out of it. It gets hollowed out. Strange things start to happen. It seems almost unavoidable. There's this tendency we have to pride and corruption. It's
because
all part of the deal.
It's the human ego
until it fails, and then we're
it's all the ego though. It's the ego needs to keep rebuilding itself, and come up with a new character.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what is the ego? Like contrasted to that stale small voice when you were at the bar and you didn't drink. You know what I mean? Like what is that? Is that God? Is that God consciousness? Is that God trying to talk to you?
Well, the more silent you become with your conscious mind, right? The mind that, like us talking to each other right now, it's having a conversation with you as you talk to me. Like the thing just wants to keep going.
Right.
And so when that, on a layer of spiritual practices, what happens is that consciousness can slow down to a point where you become the controller of you are in charge of your own thinking. So the thinking's not thinking for you, you think for the thinker, right? And then the slower that thing slows down to a point of a stillness, is there always is an inner voice that doesn't come from the consciousness. And that inner voice is whatever we choose to call this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, we live in a 3-dimensional realm. And if I had a prop right now, I'd be holding a little pin, and I would say this little pin, on top of that pin is the earth, and that little ball is the size of us compared to all the planets, and it's spinning, and it's flying into infinity right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we're worried about the Lakers who won tonight. You know what I mean? It's like we all should be in awe every day we wake up, just like we're spinning and flying through space, for God's sake.
Like, what's the Earth is rotating at like 1,000 miles an hour, and somehow gravity keeps us here.
If we believe it's round, though.
Right.
It could be flat,
yeah.
too.
You want to go there?
I don't know much about flat, but I've listened to the flat guys. I'm like, that guy's got a point. Ice cap around the whole thing.
This is the second time this is in a week that we've
come up against the flat Earth.
Yeah, we met a real deal like flat earther in the sauna last week.
Yeah.
And it turned into a whole thing where we had like 10 guys in the sauna, and then one guy was exposed as being like a diehard flat earther, and everyone was just...
We were just eating him.
You gotta
pouncing
get
on
him
him
on here or let him talk.
Maybe one day. Yeah.
I mean,
you know
honestly,
who you are, brother.
Yeah, I know. You need to come over and sit about the flat earth thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stuff out there conspiracy-wise, but, getting back to us, though, like, what is the trip here? What is the point of this mission? If you believe in any reincarnation, and we have proof of all that now, right? I mean, you got a 4-year-old that looks at a picture of 10, exaggerating, but 6 army guys that all died in the 40s, and he can name every single one of them. I mean, what's that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories.
Well, Jung
like
even talked about that in his Red Book too.
Yeah.
About like coincidences and stuff, and how it's not just a coincidence.
Synchronicity was the term.
Synchronicity. It was his term, and that was Carl Jung, and he was one of the guys that
influenced the big book.
Yeah, he influenced. Well, Roland Hazard. The Roland Hazard story. Like, he went to Carl Jung, and he's like all effed off. And he's a wealthy guy. He can't get sober. He can't he can't live right. And Jung basically told him, if you don't have a spiritual trip, you're fucked, buddy.
And I tried to give you one, and I totally can't.
I totally can't.
So good luck.
So good luck. And that's a fascinating story. But that guy, when he wrote his Red Book, I mean, people started thinking, academia started kind of going, yeah, he might be losing it a little bit, but
Of course.
I don't think so. I think that I've been watching a couple of those interviews, those old interviews when he's like 80.
Yeah, there's footage of him.
There's a lot of footage of him talking about it. And here's like literally one of the godfathers of modern psychology, right? Like, this is he studied under Freud. And here he is getting into kind of this more mystic language as all his investigations are kind of coming to a conclusion, and all his experience with interviewing people and therapy and being at psych wards. And I mean, there's one famous one where he talks about this one insane guy he goes and talks to, and you can look it up on YouTube. And the guy explains like some type of theology that another real great theologian had already written down. And so everybody's thinking, this guy just keeps repeating this stuff, right? And so they're like, you're insane, bro. Like, you're nuts. But then Jung figured out that no, he's referring to this other guy in history that like was like this, really prophetic writer. And it matches up perfectly, kind of like the kid thing you were talking about, right? Like, how is that? Like, the guy didn't even... There's no way this guy ever read his book. It's just not possible. And this is coming from a scientist. Jung is a scientist, right? When you argue that and it's fascinating. Yeah. It's like, lean more into that stuff.
There's this, the self, capital S. So some people refer to, we talk about self as being more of like the ego level, thought level, and then there's this idea of the self being this, kind of benevolent force, this God, spirit, something like that. Jung was big into that. I think that's where he parted from Freud. Freud was really more in the unconscious being this kind of repository for just repressed sexual deviance and stuff like that. Right. And Jung was like, no, dude, down there's some sort of connective tissue. There's something deeper that's drawing us, where we need to go. Yeah.
Well, and in some theories, right? Like, we signed up. Like, we signed up to come down here. We said, okay, I'm coming down there.
Yeah.
And this time, I swear, Father, like, my whole thing is I'm gonna work for you. I'm gonna help as many souls as I can. No of the temptations will ever get me, you know. And then boom, you're reincarnated into a family, and you know, everything they download into your consciousness, you believe all that, whatever nationality, race, religion, country, like all that gets downloaded in you, right? And then think about how hard it would be, whatever you get programmed in, to renounce everything you've been programmed from your own generational families and stuff, right? All this philosophies and religions and whatever it is, it's all going into your consciousness, and it goes into your subconscious. So for the soul to say, you know what? It's like a pop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. Like, all that stuff is not me. Like, it's all not real. Like, it's what they told me, or what I watched, or what's on TV, or what they program me in school. When all that gets dropped, then it's you. It's you. You're by yourself. And then all of a sudden there's a realization that, like, you know what? I have this connection with something that is way beyond my understanding. And just doing good deeds and going down and just good deeds, I don't believe is going to open the door. I think that we need to, it takes a deeper discipline, and discipline meaning everything, the way we think, our thoughts, our actions, how we treat people, what we put into our body, you know?
What we wear on our feet.
Yeah. Our feet separates us from the ground, but we have the little shoes to do that. But, you know, and I would, you know, there's so many disciplines to keep opening up that door to have that realization, like, you and the Father are one, which is, all these masters keep saying the same thing. And the reality is, we are all one with the Father. Mm. We all come from creation. We're sitting right here. Where did we come from? You didn't come from an egg, you know?
And it's not that you have to become one with the Father. You already are. You just have to accept that. Remember that.
Well, the Father is a very dogmatic word, I feel. It's tied to a lot of Christianity, but it's like there's a power. I mean, I love the word. It's formless and has no character. So how do we even put a label on it? I mean, we try to call it God or universe. You know what I mean? It's formless, has no character. But it's an energetic power that's so powerful that even in this realm, I don't think the understanding could ever get there. You know? I mean, they've written about it, but it's like
this type of, you know, it gets to a point where none of this is real. This is all an illusion. It's not happening.
But when you say that, though, what's the illusion, though?
What's the illusion?
Because this is real. Right? We're talking.
Do you prescribe to that?
That we're sitting here talking. Yeah. This is real.
Yeah. Some people might disagree that if
I know
it's like a simulation. Is that what you're trying to get to? Like we're a brain in a vat.
Or that it's sort of just it's a dream. This isn't the truth. The truth is like this, you know, again, formless, characterless screen that's behind all of these vicissitudes and appearances that are not the real truth. They're the lowercase t truth. And it's all you just have to wake up. It's not happening.
But what's the illusion, though? Like, I would say, if I asked you guys, I mean, money does run, but isn't money an illusion? I mean, is there anything real about money? It's a piece of paper.
But I think, you know, it's funny. I've been looking into, you know, money, what it appears to me is almost like one of the oldest religious practices. It is. It's like a religion in itself.
You're talking about paper?
No, just the idea of money.
Say more.
Because, you know, look at all the currencies in the world. Yeah. And this kind of maybe goes into a little conspiracy too, but it's almost like on every dollar bill there's some prominent figure. Every coin, even going back to Rome, you know, even past that, there's some almost deity type person, Superman, Ubermensch, you could call, like Nietzsche would probably call, is stamped on money. And it's a medium of exchange to transfer values back and forth between people, right? And it's it's like you go to Europe and the Queen of England's on, money, right? You go to the United States, the dollar bill is George Washington, founding father.
But where is the backing to the piece of paper though?
Well, it used to be that. Well, in some countries it's the gold standard. It's gold.
Yeah.
But we got off the gold standard in '70. I think it was Nixon that got us off the gold standard. Which, now it's just fiat. They call it fiat currency, and it's backed by the United States government's promise.
Yeah.
It's a government promissory note.
But we just accept it as being real.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying.
Right?
I think
We
it's
just accept it.
I think it's a deeper thing though, where
And you can
it's a religion.
It's hard to really
we
deny
worship it.
It's what?
It's hard to deny it.
Yeah, but it's not real. It's literally a piece of paper
There's
we agree on that says this has value, but
Right.
there's no value to it.
But there's also the thing about money. It's a fascinating topic, actually.
You're gonna start
right?
tickling his pickle because he's a big crypto bro.
Yeah. It's a fascinating topic.
I have to. Can I go to the little boys' room so I get a bathroom break? Or should I'll just.
Curious what you think about this one. So there's kind of a well-known book called *Sapiens*, written by this guy named Noah Yuval Harari, Israeli academic, whatever. The book, it deals with this question of, okay, the species of humans, Homo, if you go back long enough, there were a whole bunch of different species of humans.
Right.
And now there's only one. Right? Like Homo sapiens, something happened, top dogs, all the other ones went extinct. Like, what happened? And he explains there's this number called the Dunbar number. It's about 150. And it's this idea of, like, if you were to talk about chimpanzees or different organisms, unless they're like bees that are all connected, like almost as a single organism, organisms generally can't cooperate at levels over about 150. If you get above that, things like splinter off. And we just don't have the capacity to cooperate at that level of complexity. So he has this theory that for Homo sapiens, there was 3 revolutions that were experienced. The first one was the cognitive revolution. The second one was the agricultural revolution. And then the third one was the industrial revolution. Industrial revolution, factories and, modern manufacturing. Agricultural revolution, we started planting things. Wow. But the first one of the cognitive revolution was something happened that can't really be explained. It could have been the aliens came down. It could have been the stoned ape hypothesis. We started
about Anunnaki or
the Anunnaki.
That's one. Anunnaki.
Anunnaki.
Cave. Early humans started f***ing around with mushrooms, and they started seeing stuff.
I'm in with both those two.
Yeah.
I think.
But something happened, and his explanation for it is what he calls shared myths. Is that somehow humans developed the capacity to be able to have shared myths. And a great example of a shared myth would be money, right? It's a myth. It's not real. You can't really describe it as real, but we all can agree upon it, and we can act around it in a way. Yeah. And it's sort of this cognitive.
It's like a virtue,
superpower that we have that through this network of religious ideas or ethical ideas or monetary ideas. None of them are really real. None of them you can put your hands on, but because we agree on them, we're able to
expand on them.
We're able to have an air conditioner and watch Beavis and Butthead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just the fact is we agree on it. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about society right now. Society, right? You got all these people, all human beings. You have this home that's let's just say all these homes are worth $100,000. I mean, if you built them back when they were built, they probably are worth less than that.
Right.
But they've got high value on it, especially in California. But if all of us agreed, just in California, say, you know what? We're not paying anyone anymore anything. This is my home. I've been paying for the past 20 years. I've already paid this. I should have paid this note off a long time ago. And everyone just stopped feeding the bank systems. Mm. It would change California dramatically if we all agreed on it. Like literally every neighbor here is like, okay,
what would happen?
Literally impossible. It's never going to happen.
Well, it'd be chaos.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
But what do you think would happen?
Commerce
if
would
somehow
stop.
It could happen miraculously. Everyone could agree.
I don't think anything would happen. The only thing is what people would. I feel like we came here, right? Literally, like, I love Osho, which, right? You ever read Osho, right?
Mhm.
Sri Bhagavan Rajneesh.
Well, he was the Wild Wild Country.
Yeah, 99 Rolls Royces.
Yeah,
I mean, I love the guy. The guy
Yeah.
was so brilliant. Like, I mean, people would just be like,
yeah.
renounce everything
I
just
know,
to hang out
I
with the
know,
guy.
I
And
know.
he was a bit of a rascal, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was
He
a
was a
rascal.
spiritual playboy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
talk about money. I mean, he had
Yeah.
99 Rolls Royces. For
Yeah,
God's
yeah,
sake.
yeah, yeah.
Why
that's
not
right.
100?
I met the guy who painted them, the ones he had all painted out. Yeah.
Damn.
It's the opposite of asceticism, right? At some point, there's like a
Oh, I mean, he has these watches on, which is like, probably worse.
there's a type of non-attachment in that, right?
Yeah,
It's like it doesn't
You
matter.
like flip the whole game on its
Script,
head.
yeah.
Yeah, he made it a big joke.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he was totally spiritual at the same time.
Right.
People trip out like, well, you didn't renounce her. He's like, I'm not like the Jains or the Buddhists. Like, we don't need to renounce the world. We can live in a spiritual. Like, we're here to dance. We're here to love. We're here to do art. We're here to do pottery. We're here to build and create. Like, God made this beautiful planet for us. But, how many people get to do that? Like, honestly, like, most people have to get up and go to work every day, right? To pay for the luxuries of having a roof over your head, to have a car, and to have
Well, to eat
nice things for
food.
your children and food,
Yeah.
right? So, but if we just came to just create, I mean, think about, this is not trying to change the world. I'm just saying, like, we're all here to create. Most people are content watching other people create and sit back and watch the show. That's why we have sports, right? That's why we watch football games and basketball. Like, these people are doing what they love. We're watching it like somehow we're playing the game, the attachment to it. So if we're here to, like, really create, and it's kind of like where I'm going in the direction, out in the desert on 5 acres, like, I'm going to create all this stuff that pronounces my love for God. I don't really care what anybody thinks. I know that it's so real. I want to create these grandiose things, and I was telling my wife, 20 years from now, they're going to be walking around going like, wow, what are these people into? Like, there's a pyramid here and some dome thing, and he had like, what are they doing here? Like, what were they into? You know what I mean? They might laugh at it. It'd be like some drive-by tour thing out there. Like,
Like
one
the
of
giant
those-
dinosaur.
right.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
Egyptians.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Asclepius, like, I mean, I can't say exactly what he wrote, but what he says is like, oh, Egyptians, like, one day they're gonna look at you and laugh, like, you praise the god so much.
Who said that?
Asclepius. I know, it's such a turf word. Hermes.
Is this like a Greek or
Hermes. Yeah.
Hermes
Yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking
It's such
about.
a hard name to say.
Yeah.
But he said that. He was a sage. He said that, they're going to laugh at Egypt. It'd be like, basically, Egypt is turned into, like, kids' books, I mean, look what they've done. I mean, it's so
You don't think it was the aliens? Those weren't super generators to communicate with the Anunnaki's planet far off?
I went to a Richard Greer.
Oh, the alien guy.
Yeah, I
Right,
went to his workshop in Colorado.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, he had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
meditation. He's tying this meditation in how to contact, aliens,
Right.
and he's an expert on it, and blah blah blah. And then he gets up there, and the stories are just, you're just like, okay. I mean, I don't know. I can't say. I'll tell you what about that conference that was so cool, and I wish I could pull up the picture for you guys, but they hired this team of guys, like these 3 guys, to literally take a picture of anything that seemed.
Well, send us the picture and we can.
I will. It was supposed to be
yeah.
abnormal. Like,
Yeah.
they're supposed, like, they were on the roof waiting the whole time, and this was it was a 2-day workshop, and it was with Gaia. It was at the Gaia Institute, and that Saturday night it came out. And I literally took this photo of the Gaia sign, because it was like, the Gaia, the spiritual network. And literally, you look at my picture, and it seriously looks like 3 spaceships, like, above. I mean, it looks so real. I look at it like, and then someone looked at it, and next thing you know, it's like all over the conference. Like, you see the picture that he took? And Gaia comes up to me, is like, can we use the picture? Can you sign a release form? Like, I'm like, yeah, you can have it. Like,
Yeah.
he comes up to me. He's like, oh, my God. He put it on the stage. Like, there's the proof. And the 3 guys that were supposed to take the photo, right? everyone else was like, "Oh my god, aliens were here," and the three guys that were supposed to take the photo, they're like, they just tried everything. It was lighting. They just tried to denounce it, and I was like laughing. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, I don't really care if it was a spaceship or not, but look at the photos. Like, I mean, even the UFO specialist was saying it was aliens.
Right.
It was pretty cool, but it depends on what chapter you want to open up. That's the game here, right?
Well, but that's like a thing, right? The pyramids, like they were super communicators or something. I can't remember. There's a bunch of dudes. It's a rabbit hole, and like the chamber of the king and stuff, and how they were designed. It really was some kind of generator, and it was a way of being able to talk to these other planets, because the Anunnaki and some other alien races were in a civil war, and then they were kind of defectors that came here, and they found like these ape hominid type creatures, and they mixed with us, basically. They made us.
Yeah.
So we're partly them.
But who writes history?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
the victors.
Who writes history?
Yeah.
People.
The people who conquered.
Yeah, the people who won,
right?
Primarily.
Yeah.
But this is all taken from the Sumerian tablets, right? And that's kind of interesting. I don't know if the Dead Sea Scrolls kind of point to some of this stuff too.
It's next level.
It is next level.
It is next level.
Yeah.
The Emerald Tablets, like all that's next level. But the thing is, there's a guy, Billy Carson, that I mean, he's pretty powerful. I think he's really educated, and he really gives some good knowledge on this stuff. There's some other great guys talking about it, but again, you know what? We're in 2024. What are you doing today? I mean, and you go back to this thing about money or materialism. Why is it when you get all the things you think you desired, there becomes suffering? Like,
why? What do you think?
Well,
because it's your disillusion, because it doesn't fulfill the promise that you expected?
It's the God hole, and you can't fill a God hole with just a couple cars and Harleys.
Well,
right.
How about the only thing that we'll go back to money? The only thing money cannot buy is internal peace.
Right.
Like being content in your own little bodysuit. And why is there so much suffering? Like isn't that a weird, like, talk about non-duality? Like, why is there so much suffering over here? But yet you see people that have engaged in the pursuit of, let's not use the word enlightenment, but just being more aware of controlling your own awareness of your mind. And all of a sudden you start taking all these steps, right? Like you do cold plunge stuff, and you start doing breath work, and you start doing all these things that are kind of abnormal, and you start feeling really good about yourself physically, right? And then all of a sudden you start getting this happiness, and someone can say, well, here's these toys, and you can take the toys, but the toys won't give you the same effect as the spiritual practice did. Like like whatever the toy might be. Let's just say the nice car. That car will eventually fade away, where it's like you want the next toy, right? But then you do these spiritual practices, and you start getting this peace and contentment in your own body, in your own little body you're sitting in. Like, is that not bizarre?
It is bizarre.
Like, how do we? What's the understanding of that? It doesn't make sense.
Well, but I think it's a perversion, right? Like I honestly think there is a way, because it's funny when you feel like you're right in the world, like you're rightly related. Money just seems to not be a problem ever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Money's
it's like the
energy.
Jesus story, right? Like he didn't have a job where he clocked in, right? His job was to preach the good word, right? He was like a rabbi, basically, right? And everywhere he went in Nazareth, he was just taken in and fed, and his feet were washed. You know what I mean? And that's like his trip was that he wasn't clocking in on the time clock to get the money for the village or whatever, how we kind of do it now. But I think it is a perversion, though, because I think, and I'll always defend money, because I think we need that median. We need that median of exchange. Otherwise, it's a gun, or it's the strong man.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing. It's something I've been down the road too, where I've had the toys and it's empty. It is an empty thing. But I don't think we can get rid of money though.
No, you're not going to get rid of money.
Yeah.
We just agree on it, and
Yeah.
it's not real. That's
Right,
that's
right.
just a fact. It's
Yeah,
not
right,
like
it's just a
I'm not
fact.
saying
it's an abstraction.
right. We need it because
Right.
we agree on it,
Right.
and it becomes a currency to
Right.
be able to trade.
Right.
But
That's
it's
it.
still
Yeah.
not real.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of
Rep-
paper.
represents value.
And it's the
Yeah.
it's the pursuit of money that's the root of all evil. It's not money itself. I think a lot of guys get that game twisted.
Yeah.
What's
you
the
know.
Ayn Rand thing? If money is the root of all evil, what's the root of all money?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really go to the root of all money, it's actually a thing that's been invented. It's an abstraction that's been invented to create peace. So you don't have warring tribes trying to get. I'm going to try to get your shit. You're going to try to get my shit. You know, it's that Nietzschean. You know, the blonde beast going around. You know, noble but violent and ruthless. You know, the king.
And
Yeah.
there are so many people that have a large amount of wealth that probably do so much good for humanity
Right.
that we don't know about.
Yeah, you don't even know
that
about them.
pay
Yeah.
for these hospitals or
Right.
pay
Yeah.
for the children. I mean, there's people who just
Right.
literally-
Humanitarians, yeah.
humanitarians
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
amazing human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah.
Like, and there's no recognition. They're not on the news.
Right.
You know, it's like, I mean, there's a lot of good people too.
Right,
You know, there's
right.
just as much darkness, there's as much light.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of good people, and yes, and a lot of that stuff helps people, and that's, you know, I would say that, you know, my big thing is that is a side note, but money, right? This, and not to get more into like what I really disagree on is factory farming, right? Like, you know,
Yeah, because
I've-
you're a vegan, right? You've been a vegan for you don't eat any animals, right?
no animals,
No,
and
no.
it's been, you know,
Where
almost.
where did that come from? From India, or is it because I know that's a popular practice there, right? The cow's sacred, right? They don't.
Well, I was raised Italian, and you know, my grandma made Italian sausages for breakfast, and you know, and veal you know, and I was raised on meat and pastas, blah blah blah, and you know, for me, it was probably about 9 years ago. I was in a meditation, and I came out of the meditation, and I literally heard a voice that said, "Stop eating animals." I mean, where did the voice come from?
And you just did?
Yeah, and then I integrated into veganism. And now, you know, I truly believe this, and I'll say this bluntly: if anyone says they're on a spiritual path and still eat animals, you're not on a spiritual path. I'm sorry, because the intake of suffering that you're taking in, you're eating something that's dead that has no more prana life in it, right?
Well, how if you grow it in your backyard?
Well,
Like I have chickens, right? There's no rooster, right? It's just hens that lay eggs.
no, but see, I would not.
So
to
it's
get
not
it-
all animal
I'm
products.
talking about
Yeah.
factory farming,
Oh, factory
which is
farming,
the level of
yeah.
greed, right, and the
Yeah,
amount
yeah.
of suffering
Right,
from
right.
dairy products and killing. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
It's a human genocide in our culture, and we don't even we look the other way. You know. And again, spiritually, is that if you asked yourself, you know, it's just like if you had kids, would you take them to a factory farm and it was all glass and just let them look at these animals getting
Right,
slaughtered?
yeah.
I mean, the child would probably never meet again in its life, you know. And I just think spiritually, you get to these points where you don't want to harm it. You don't want to take in any suffering, you know. And here's my theory on this: like, okay, so we have so much road rage today, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we all know that. You get on the
So
freeway.
it's all meat eaters.
Well, it's the fast food.
Well, you're
Okay.
probably right. Yeah.
Johnny or Susie just got through going through the line at McDonald's, took down a double bacon Western or whatever they serve, right?
Oh, she's absorbed that suffering, and
She's
she's gonna
absorbed that
just
suffering.
inflict
The
it on the
screaming
world.
animal.
It gave
yeah.
a spike
yeah.
in, like, she got high because it's like, oh, and the next thing you know, the drop comes in, and then they're on the road, and there's the road rage. It's like they just took in all this suffering, and they're driving behind their vehicle. And so you see these levels of road rage.
Well,
from
see,
a large intake of fast food
Yeah, I
products.
respect the argument of veganism through that, not the respect that it's better for you.
What if there's no
'Cause-
difference between?
Yeah,
I'm not talking
health-wise.
dietary or anything, because-
I respect that kind of way of looking at it because I was a
Yes.
vegan for years too.
Yeah.
and it was basically based on that.
Yeah.
And I think I eat meat out of convenience, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's convenient. It's easy. I try to get like the range-free, stuff that's not factory farmed if I can. I am conscious of that. But I also there's another thread though, that we are hunters.
And supposedly they've told us that.
Well, but I've hunted. I'm a
Right.
fly fisherman. I used to hunt bucks.
Fly fishing is not hunting.
Yeah, but it's a heat. Like we were actually going to name this podcast
Tracking a mammoth.
Tracking a Mammoth, because it's this idea that hunting was one of our first group activities we participated in.
Supposedly.
Right. And from that activity, we had to learn how to communicate. And from that, we had to come up with strategy. And, okay, you're going to go left. I'm going to go right. The mammoth's over there. We're going to, go hunt them.
And what we're doing now is evolved from that early instinct. The three of us are tracking a mammoth.
We're tracking an idea.
We're tracking ideas. We're trying to hone in on it by all trying to describe it from our relative position.
But remember, they're all beings. They're beings. Like, just like the...
What do you say about the eagle that like rips apart live animals every day so that it can survive?
Yeah. That's part of in the world of creation, right? I mean there's meat eaters in that world, right? I mean, if you lived in the wilderness in a tribe and they hunt for survival and stuff like that, it's probably part of the organic nature of what it's supposed to be. All I'm saying is factory farming is a genocide. Like, it really is. Like, we
So if
I mean, Thanksgiving's a genocide. We killed
on the turkeys.
Billions of turkeys. Poor little gobble guys. They didn't do nothing wrong. It's like they slaughtered millions. I think it's like 700 million turkeys get slaughtered for Thanksgiving.
Well,
and
but
Thanksgiving's not even real.
Well, it's a fascinating thing that I learned about, because I've had chickens for like 7 years, and I have them. I keep them in my backyard. I showed you the coop, and it's fascinating that you don't even need a rooster. That's what's so fascinating, is like, so you get this nutritious egg from a hen that's going to lay eggs. They lay a clutch, and it doesn't matter if there's a rooster or not. They just lay.
Right. And there's no embryo in it.
There's no. Well, there is. It's all there. It just hasn't been fertilized.
Oh, okay.
Right. So nothing's going to happen to it. It's just going to rot.
Right.
Or some predator is going to come and steal it from the clutch. Right. So it's a fascinating, like that's a fascinating point. I never, that's a real thing, and you can actually have eggs that are like kind of vegan. You know what I mean? Because the eggs that they lay, nothing's going to come of them. They're just going to rot. And if they stay in place too long, they can actually, like, bacteria and all that stuff, they can actually like kill the chicken eventually, because they're going to be around the eggs because they're waiting for them to hatch.
Right.
And, once the smell comes off, they'll maybe go do a clutch somewhere else. But it creates an environment that is not sustainable. So you got to harvest the eggs, kind of like bee honey, right? Like you can ethically harvest bee honey without hurting the colony, right? And then eat the honey. You can.
You obviously agree.
You don't agree.
Well, the tongue has 3 gatekeepers.
Here we are back at the tongue has 3 gatekeepers. We've come full circle.
Is necessary. I mean, I just my whole point on that is like I'm not arguing anything with growing eggs or if you want to eat eggs.
Right.
What I would say though, if you're literally truly living on a spiritual trip, like literally, the intake of any type of suffering ingested in your body is breaking a law of spirituality, I would feel. Now, eating eggs that you're growing, I don't, I can't say
those chickens are happy.
I can't say that's wrong.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of what nature is.
Right.
I mean.
But where does the suffering live? Is it your claim that the suffering is like imprinted into the cells of the thing you're eating, or is it more of a psychological consequence of your knowledge of what you participated in, and that sort of stains your spirit in some way, or both?
They done like before the impact of the gun to the head, or
like
the
a cortisol.
Like they get a rush to their body. And
blood.
I've
heard that. What movie was that in?
Yeah,
where it's that famous movie.
Well, there's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There's the adrenochrome.
Oh, the adrenochrome. That's one thing. Yeah, but there's that famous movie with Meryl Streep. And she got an award for it, and it's a family movie, really, but it's real dramatic. And this one girl's like she's like a vegan, and the uncle, she gives that same kind of statement about how the cortisone goes up, and so you're ingesting that, and you're ingesting the suffering, And then the uncle just starts screaming. He takes a bite of like the chicken. He starts screaming at the top of his lungs. It like freaks everybody out. It's a funny scene. It'll come to me.
You know, and here's what I'd say. It's like everyone we all have free will here to do whatever we want. And there's no right or wrong, and everyone has their own. You make your own moral judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You're your own lawgiver. That's what free will is. You're your own lawgiver. You could do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And are they right or wrong? I'm not saying that. All I would say if I made a statement on veganism, that the amount of greed and money that's in the processing food markets now,
right,
is that they're treated unhumane and they're treated like they're nothing. And they have, we know that for a fact, right? They have little wives and they have little children. They have little families. They communicate like they're beings. They just don't talk like we do, but we treat them like I need a T-bone steak or something. It's and talk to a lot of people. They'll laugh. Steak is good. Of course it is. It's not saying it's not good. It's you have a choice, and it's up to you to make a choice if you want to eat suffering or not eat suffering. And then, like you said, the bees or the eggs or raw milk. If you had dairy cows out there and you were getting raw milk from them, in early. The Essenians and all that, they ate honey, they ate raw milk. I mean, there's I listened to a podcast driving down here today, and it was all about, talking about Jesus and he was an Essenian, like it's how he was a vegetarian, like it's but
he lightly ate animal products, but he didn't eat like go killing. Yeah.
If he was a true Essenian, he did not. The Essenians did not eat any. They were fully vegetarians. Yeah. They ate honey and they had raw milk and eggs. Right, and they never ate fish or anything. So, that was a whole. That's a whole nother world with Jesus. Like the more you start getting deeper into that about his life, and the more there's so many great people today that are coming forward that are very knowledgeable and really presenting how the New Testament was literally. The Roman Catholic Church just took full control of that.
Well, we just saw
really heavy
Jordan Peterson, and he's he's probably in that club, and he's done extensive work on the Bible, like just of recently, to the point where I think he's going to be. We have a bet that he's going to come out as he's been saved by Jesus, because he's a scientist, but he's been slowly going towards that, and it's kind of a hot topic right now in the social media world. It's like the people are.
But he was Jesus was a sage. If Jesus really was an Essenian, which was, there's more proof and proof. We know, not to get, because it's such a big topic, but we know that the Council of Nicaea, right, is when they sat down and the Roman Catholic Church but they
decided here's what the Bible is going to be.
Roman Catholics, and then basically put what they wanted to in the Bible. Paul never met Jesus. Paul didn't like the disciples. Paul, basically said, you believe in Jesus Christ and you're free. Like, it's nothing what Jesus said. And I like what this guy was saying. They're more like Paulatinians. You know what I mean? Like the Christians are more like Paulatinians today. They listen to Paul's word over Jesus's. Mm-hmm. And Jesus is... if you go to Nag Hammadi and you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls and you start looking at all these gospels that were left out, it's like, oh my, and then, how many people got killed because of the Roman Catholic Church?
Yeah.
The Cathars.
The Inquisition.
Mm-hmm. If you did not believe in that doctrine, you're dead. Think about that today. It's heavy, but again, everyone has free will. Everybody is their own lawgiver. Everybody has a choice to make their own decision for themselves.
You can do whatever you want as long as you're willing to pay the consequences.
Yeah. And I do believe that I do believe that heaven and hell is not some off distant thing. Heaven and hell is right now.
Yeah, right here and right now. Yeah.
And if you have not been to hell on this planet, then you don't know what I'm talking about. If you've been to hell and you've been in the dark side, you know what I'm talking about. And it's like when you come into the light, which would be heaven on earth, right? You know that it's a whole different trip.
Charles Bukowski, some people never go crazy. what horrible lives they must lead.
Yes. Profound.
Mm-hmm.
Great alcoholic.
Yeah. He never even, he went all the way to the end, man, the bitter end. He never waved the white flag.
Yeah, he never did. Barfly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, if we get back to that, though, what is the whole thing about? Like, why is there so much suffering, though?
Yeah.
That's a trippy part.
It is a good question,
What's the suffering for?
But I mean, I think about, like, I read a little bit of this book called Baboon Metaphysics. I never finished it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
I know. I want to get back into it. But I just was so struck. Like, right at the gate, it talked about how most baboons, their fate is basically to be ripped apart by a predatory cat or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what's going to happen. If you're a baboon, like, that's what's going to happen to you eventually.
Yeah.
You eventually get sick enough that you'll have a limp and there's no
won't be able to get
doctors
away.
and you're going to be kind of, you're going to get picked off and you're going to be somewhere and some sort of like crazy bird or something is going to like just destroy you while you're alive. And at some level, that's your fate. And these are intelligent creatures, but it's the fate for most creatures. If you just went out here in the Thousand Oaks suburban landscape, there's going to be some wildlife. There's little bunnies running around. Yeah. Those bunnies are going to get their heads torn off, at some point.
Right.
Like, we are in this strange, privileged position because of, whatever, the stoned ape hypothesis or the pyramids or whatever, that, we're so privileged that we could maybe die a natural death where our family's around us and we're, just like given Dilaudid and we get to hang out and watch, reruns and, and just kind of fade off into the whatever. But for most creatures still throughout history, it's a war of all against all. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Just on the material plane, there's a disease. Disease is constantly trying to infiltrate our bodies and destroy us from the inside. Take a parking lot and just close it down for a couple of months or a couple of years, and you just watch the grass. It just gets destroyed by nature. It's constantly, a house too. You got to paint it every once in a while. Right. If you weren't maintaining this thing, it would just get consumed. Yeah. And that's a strange fact of the world. It's one that we have to, and we have our things, we have our mortgages we pay, and we have our health insurance we pay for, and we think that because all this exists, we're somehow exempt from some of these crueler, unsavory laws in the world. But are we really? Are we really that far out of the woods? Maybe not.
Well, and that goes into the allure of the desert too. When we were talking about that prior, like, there's a terror in the desert too, right? Just like I get a lot of that charge that you get from the desert in the mountains, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at a beautiful landscape, it's beautiful, and we can all agree, like, wow, you go to Kennedy Meadows, right? And you're just like, you've been there a couple times. Gorgeous. It's just, you just like are sitting there, just like awestruck, but you're also terrified at the same time. Because if you're left out there alone, naked and afraid,
right,
and you're gonna get munched.
I heard Jordan Peterson said something like that once. It was like people just they are so enamored by nature. It's so beautiful. They feel recharged by it. It's where they see God. If we could just be in nature more, how good things would be. But take the average person and drop them into the middle of like nature, naked, and their blood pressure would jump to about 100. Their heart rate would jump to about 150, and they'd be dead in like 2 hours if they're lucky.
They have no survival skills.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything happened here, the supermarkets would be probably cleaned out in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
well, I'd have my eggs though.
You got your eggs. You could boil them, fry them, scramble them,
and nobody would be coming for them.
Yeah. Oh, everybody would be coming for them eventually.
And you just hold them all off with your
AR-15.
little arsenal you have down there. But you'd be fine.
Let's look at one fact, though, right? Let's look at the human being itself.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, right? You got 80 years, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
So, if you go generations, we just keep hearing these stories that were told from generations back and back, right? Mm-hmm. When they tell us things were built, blah, 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 and they say, I mean, do we know if any of it's true? I mean, even the whole dialogue, what we learned in school, we've been told that. Mm-hmm. There's no one here that ever experienced it.
Yeah, it's true.
Never. Mm-hmm. So whatever agenda wants to be told, it keeps getting told. But no one's ever been around long enough to say that they know whether any of it's real or not. Think about it. Like, no one lives that long.
Yeah.
So every 100 years, you have a new reprogramming of whatever wants to be carried over into the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of trippy.
It is.
Well, it is trippy because you mentioned something earlier today too, like 5,000 years ago. There's these practices, this discipline that you submit yourself to, and in a weird way, you're bringing the past back by practicing those. You're basically paying homage to the ancestors that created that discipline, right?
Well, let's say, because one of the theories, right? It's a theory. Jesus, when from 12 to 33, or right, he was where was he? I mean, none of the Christians know where he was. He was doing carpentry work. I mean, now if you talk.
Well, there's theories that he was in Egypt.
Well, yeah, he went to Persia and India and Egypt. And one of the stories about him when he was in India, he saw these saints, these Brahmins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had all these slaves building these massive
temples,
and these statues.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worship false idols, right? And he's like, the God creation is your slaves. It's not the idols. It's these people are God incarnated, but yet you're having them build all this stuff. And everywhere he went, supposedly, like the story goes, the Brahmins wanted to kill him, and he went into Persia, and you're worshiping the fire, but the fire is the Father. Like, they want to take him out. So he always knocked everybody down that was worshiping anything but the Creator.
Sounds like he was a bit of a rascal himself.
Yeah, rascal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, profound, like next level.
We're still talking about him.
Yeah. But again, what it comes down to is, all I'm saying is, it's all a bunch of stuff that's been written. No one in this generation, this century, can say it's real or not. No one was there. I mean, we're just taking the words that people wrote down, right? And we just believe it.
Yeah.
It's all we just believe it like it's fact.
We have no way to know.
We have no way.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know if history says, the Romans did this in this time. Like,
None of it could have happened.
none of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
But isn't it a better, like, if we were, like, in Vegas, there's a better bet that it's closer than if we were to just, or no?
I mean, okay, so if the Big Bang Theory is real, do you guys believe in the Big Bang Theory?
I mean,
That's
a gnarly one.
a gnarly one. Yeah.
I
to
mean,
wrap your head around.
Something happened. Something had to have happened. Or it's the internal recurrence theory, which is Nietzsche. I've been like reading about that and studying that, and he Nietzsche is one of our favorite guys. And actually, what you're saying is very Nietzschean, because he would say that we need to have new philosophers. We need to have a new philosophy, right? Like we need to be pushing forward instead of going, back and going like, oh no, we got to save this tradition, or we got to save this or that, right? Like it's all bullshit. Like there needs to be, we need to philosophize with a hammer.
It's 2024. What are you doing today?
Yeah, what are you doing today?
We need a new spiritual
game. Right. We need to overcome man. Would be overcoming, and that's probably why Asha wrote a book about Nietzsche, right? The book you sent us is like it's him, because he was a philosophy major, right? He was actually trained in philosophy, ironically, and he had a book that like he's having a dialogue with Nietzsche. Nietzsche was back in the 1700s, but he's having a dialogue with him, and his philosophy really marries up with kind of a lot of the Eastern kind of practices, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism. But he plays with Christianity, he plays with a lot of them, but he smashes them all.
Yeah.
And he says that we have to move forward instead of looking back. And
but if the Big Bang Theory was a reality that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say the Big Bang was the creator of all, blew up and expanded into billions, like the size of, smaller than a size of
I know, it's such a hard
sand.
theory. I know, it's...
And then every single particle of that sand is you and me and everyone around us. So in theory, if they say that we are one with the Father, or you're God in incarnation, or you and the God are one, if the Big Bang Theory is real, then
We're all from the same source.
we're all from the same source.
Right.
We're all from the
It's all
Big
one
Bang.
substance. Yeah.
And then, and not to get deep into like the near death stuff, you hear all their stories, and they all say the same thing, that we're light beings. It's all love.
And there's an idea of returning to the same source. So if there's
Returning back- yeah.
there's an expansion, then there's a contraction.
Right. So we all have a spark of the Creator in us, a spark. And the only way that spark's going to grow, like someone would say, a mustard seed, right?
Yeah.
Someone.
Who would say
I
that?
mean, Jesus.
Well, he talks about a mustard
Yeah.
seed.
Yeah.
Or so they say.
That's his most metaphysical statement about
Yeah.
reality. It's
Well,
really, it's powerful.
If you want to learn, if you want to get into Jesus, go read the Gospel of Thomas, I think. I mean, there's no dialogue. There's no crucifixion. There's nobody, there's no Romans. There's nothing. It's just like us talking right now. It's Jesus and Thomas, and they're talking all metaphysical. It's all,
Yeah.
once your eye is lit, it's like, I mean, it's just powerful stuff. But anyway, if we all have that spark of the Big Bang in us, then we're all part of this whole of one brilliant source. And the only way that source is going to expand itself in human form is through creating, right? So everything we create here is going back to the source. So all we're doing is creating constantly. And it could be good, it could be bad, it could be evil, it could be positive. It's all going back to source. Everything we create here. So if more and more human beings are turning more to that realization that I am literally here to do what the Creator wanted me to do, right? Because that would be, I love that heart's desire, right? In the soul, there's a heart's desire. There's something that your soul has a desire locked in there. And most of the time, people will never unlock.
They deny it. They're afraid to.
They're fear, all
Yeah.
that stuff, money, fear, like anything. But that soul has an unlocking power, and we see it though, like artists and, people that are creators. Not in this world. I don't think this is really creating, but it's a new form of creating. But it's creating, right? But like anything, art, paintings, sculptures.
Yeah.
I mean, architectural, like all that stuff's all creation. It's all going back to source.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of a trip when you start thinking like that.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that was kind of the reason why we got into this realm, because there is an art to this.
yeah, it's creating.
Yeah,
This is
we're creating something that other people can watch and maybe get something from, and go create something that maybe inspire. Hopefully, we inspire. Right. That's the whole point. And
I feel like there's a way to. It's Rick Rubin has this book that's kind of been doing the rounds recently called like The Creative Act, and my girlfriend Claire really got into it. But the idea that creating isn't just being a record producer.
Right.
There's a way to live. There's a way to have a conversation with the person in the drive-thru that can be creative. There's a type of living that is, that is leaning in, that's manifesting, that's making something happen,
Right.
that's like making sparks fly in the world.
I just read that book.
Did you?
Yeah, I thought it was. He says this, and it's once the soul, not in his X words, but once the soul finds what its direction is, like you think it's a direction, and your soul's pulling you that way, and then fear doesn't block you, you just keep going. And then the universe, God, or whatever you choose to call this thing, everything in its, nothing will stop the universe from helping you create what you need to create. And even though after you create it and you've accomplished that, and then you're like kind of in a lull, it's like the next idea might come, and then that intuitive thought, you jump on that plane.
What is fear?
What is fear for me?
Yeah,
Or for humans?
It's such a central topic. If
I
we're
know.
talking spiritual path, if we're talking about any of this stuff, to really touch on fear, it really starts to become central.
It's fuck everything and run.
Well, it's the
Is
consciousness.
it based on a false belief? Is there?
It's the self-doubt, the self, like not believing. Number one, not believing in yourself, right? Like, and then there's always these restrictions, the financial, or the people that you're maybe your loved ones or your friends.
We have this experience or this belief within recovery communities or spiritual circles that walking through fear, that's where things happen. That's where doors open. That's where things deepen.
Right.
But just we can do that and we can experience that and we can know that, but then we're reconfronted with it over and over again. And maybe it becomes easier. Maybe we develop sort of a reflex for it, or better, tools to help us navigate through it. But once again, the fear shows up, and it's well,
that's that alignment though, is that we, right? That alignment says we walk hand in hand with our Creator. So if we're walking hand in hand with our Creator, all of a sudden, this conscious mind that arises these fears, all these falsified thoughts that are not real, because it's like a little program. It just starts telling you these things. But then we're not attaching to these things and believing that they're real. We know it's fake because I'm walking hand with my Creator. My Creator on a deeper level is going to guide me, and I'm going to know, not from my conscious mind, but from my heart center, right? Or, even if you're reprogramming your own subconscious, right? Your subconscious will start storing stuff that, instead of storing that negative in there, it's storing like, you know what? Look at that last thing that happened. Look at that miraculous miracle that just happened. Did that just happen, or is it God guiding me? It's almost like this. That's where I think they say we're walking hand in hand with the, or it becomes a working part of the mind. I love that one. Mm-hmm. Like the mind will tell us all kinds of fear, but deep down, if we don't believe what the mind's telling us, and we know that there's this relationship with this power that's way greater than ourselves, that's going to do everything it can to guide us in whatever our heart's desire might be. And then you watch little miracles happen, right? And you're like, am I on the path? Is this real? I took a sabbatical once, and I started doing this sound work, right? I do sound therapy, and I honestly, I came from a career as a union electrician. I made good money, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden now I'm doing sound baths, right? This was after the Norco run, you know what I mean? And I'm having these spiritual experiences, and I start doing these sound baths. I literally start playing crystal bowls. Like, I mean, if you told me I play crystal bowls, I'd be like, yeah, right, pal. I start playing the crystal bowls, so I'm like doing it, and then I love this story because it's so real. I'm sitting out by the pool, and I'm reading some spiritual book, and a little butterfly flies up, right, and lands on the book. I'm reading the book, and the little guy's right there. And I go, and I'm talking now to, like, literally internally. I'm like, if I'm really on the right path, like, you little butterfly will raise your right arm, right? And so a few seconds go by, and there's the little arm. The butterfly's looking at me. I'm like, oh my God, am I losing my mind? And then I said, if this relationship with God, in my understanding, is real, you'll raise your other arm. And that weekend, I was just about to do my first men's retreat too. It was kind of funny. And that little butterfly, both arms are up like this, looking at me on the book, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to say. And then it stared at me. Both arms were up, and then it took off flying. Now, you know what I mean? I wasn't on mushrooms or anything.
Ayahuasca.
I wasn't on anything.
Yeah,
I was like I literally talked to a butterfly, and the butterfly responded to me. Now, you know what I mean? We can laugh at that. Like, oh yeah, right. I mean, it really did happen, and to me, it was so real. That whole weekend I did that men's retreat. All I did was talk about the butterfly. You know what I mean? And I had all the guys up. I think they were up at 3:30 in the morning, cold showers, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're doing yoga, and it's like 4:20 in the morning. I'm just blasting the gong. I don't even really know how to play the gong yet, but I'm just blasting it. And there was like a motorcycle club there, like camping. The guy comes up. He's like, we're trying to sleep. It's 4 o'clock, 4:15 in the morning. I'm all, hey, buddy. And I go, do me a favor, just look behind you. And there's 30 dudes. I mean, you're kind of going to upset these gentlemen. They really like the gong bath. And he like looks over, and like, you can see half of them are already yoked up. Like,
Yeah.
Mess with Mikey like you're going down, buddy. Half those guys were all biker guys too. So, of course, he tiptoed back to the campsite, and I was just played the bowls and the gong till like 5:15 in the morning. It was great. But anyway, the butterfly story, little signs, right?
Yeah, what's funny is that, like, because I'm probably on days 60 something on the cold plunge every morning, no matter what, 37 degree, and it's funny because that one
same time every day.
Same, yeah. Upon awakening. And my mind is telling me no. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. I'm starting to find that out. Like, it's this weird bartering system starts happening. The self-talking mind wakes up and goes, "Yeah, you're a little tired. Didn't sleep well last night. Like, maybe not today."
Right.
And it's just this talking, and then it's like, nope, no matter what, because I have a calendar up and I have to do it. I have to.
Right.
It's like it's already done, and then when I get out, when I do it, it's painful. It never feels great. But when I get out, like, weird things that I've noticed in the days, like, I used to be a nail biter, like a bad nail biter. I would eat the cuticles, my fingers would bleed. It's gone. Like, scrolling on my phone, like, obsessively, that's something that I definitely suffer from. It's like it's disappearing. And it's funny that you say, like, when you discipline yourself, it's like that one line, we're undisciplined, so we let God discipline us, or whatever. Is that that's the right one?
Yeah.
But just doing something like that, I mean, it's extreme. It really, you know what I mean, to the average bear.
And it's habituating you to the experience of having your mind say no.
Right.
And just doing it.
Just doing it anyways.
Walking through that.
Walking through it, the fear, and there's nobody to blame. I can't blame my wife for building that out in my backyard. I did it. You know what I mean? Like, there was something inside of me that said, no, you need to do this. And part of the investigation, and I've said this before, but I wanted to see, is all this online stuff that you're seeing, and is Wim Hof, like, are they just all quacks? Like, it's kind of like, I'm going to try to see if this is a real thing. And it is a real thing now. I'm starting to discover that. And I've talked to you, extensively about it. And we do the hot 2 exposure weekly. And there's a lot to get out of that too as well. Because when you're in a hot sauna, it's 180 plus degrees for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Like,
for 20 minutes, it's nice.
Yeah.
21 minutes,
Yeah.
You hit a point where, then to get from 25 to 20 to 30, at some point, time slows down so much. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to make it 35 minutes and you're at 34. That's not a consolation,
But just that practice, that discipline of doing it every week, every day, however it is, it gets you. It makes me not worry as much during the day.
Right.
I'm not like, oh, I got to get this money or I got to do this. It's like
you're not in as much fear.
Right. The fear. I still have. There's a low resolution fear throughout the day. You never know. Oh man, my daughter. Like, oh, is she gonna trip and fall or whatever? But it's not as consuming. Just that one. It's like I wish I could just come. It's funny because all the guys that I work with now, in the deal, I try to put that on them. I try to say, hey, no, start with cold. Because you start with cold shower. I did cold showers for 30 days straight. Right. That's how you do it. Right.
Right.
You do 3 minutes, no warm water, and then you work your way up to getting in sub 40 degree water, which is really, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
And I try to get all my guys to do it because it's like your sound bath thing. I think there's something to it for the alcoholic type mind, the drug addiction, proclivity.
Yeah.
That just it's almost like guys like us, and I'm speaking for myself, but we share that in common. Need that fucking smack. We need that, it is a shutdown of the 5 senses in a weird way, and then also, like, kind of it's like a shutdown, and then an explosion out because the rest of the day you feel great.
Yeah.
And it's long lasting. So it's interesting because that's an old practice. They've been doing that for thousands of years, and we don't even know how long they've been doing it. In cold rivers, like, who was the guy that came up with that idea? You know?
They know it. But here's that funny saying that ties to that, though. Suddenly we realize that God is doing for us
what we
could not do for ourselves. I mean, that's a pretty profound statement.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, Wim Hof, if you hear him describe his experience, he just was drawn to the water. He went through, like, his wife lost her mind.
She committed suicide. Yeah.
Jumped out of a
mental
window,
illness,
and he just got to a point where he just got in the water.
He's all about he's not really on any God trip at all. He doesn't even,
No, I know.
I'm
relating it to
about
that.
mind.
Yeah.
He's all about the mind, which
Right.
is, again, I mean, he's trained his own mind,
Right.
right? If the conscious mind is like a wild puppy, right? I mean, most human beings, the conscious mind runs the show. And, all these spiritual teachings, that's what it gets down to. All the spiritual lineage, all the spiritual teachings are saying one thing: become the master of your own mind.
Right.
You run the show.
Right.
Don't let the mind run the show.
Right.
So if you're in charge of your own mind, right? I love the example of being an observer, right? Like, imagine sitting in a little chair there, and it's a projection screen, and you're watching your own consciousness, and you're aware of the level of insanity that it takes on, but you never attach to any of it because you know it's all falsified information. It's not even real. But if you talk to many human beings in 12-step or not 12-step, the conscious mind runs the show. They really think it's the director of the game. And it's not the director. Behind the scene, right, there is an underlying power that's in every single one of us. Again, that spark of creation, that oneness with God, whatever you start learning how to use that terminology. Even, again, going back to Jesus, it's not Jesus Christ, it's the Christ consciousness that you could obtain just like Jesus did. It's Christ consciousness. It has nothing to do, I mean, his name was Yeshua anyway, it wasn't even Jesus. But
That might be a good place to stop, but I've got one more question that I want to ask you. In the exposure I had to Rick Rubin, one of my favorite things about him is that, he's a multi-millionaire.
right.
And he's got this beautiful studio, Shangri-La, and he's recorded everyone under the sun.
Yeah.
But he only owns one pair of shoes. It doesn't matter if he's going to the Grammys or if he's going to, CVS or he's going to a wedding. He always wears the same pair of shoes, and that pair of shoes is a pair of Crocs. Is that why you wear Crocs?
Oh, my wife got me those. They're really comfortable, No, I don't know. I don't know Rick Rubin that good to say that. I know that book, I very much enjoyed it. There was a lot of music stuff that I really didn't relate to, but behind the scene of what he's talking about, I love the viewpoint is that we get past these levels of the conscious mind guiding the show, and we follow what that inner voice is.
That's what he's actually been successful with. He's not a musician himself, or at least not, proficient. He's a fantastic listener. He can listen to something and he's so in tune with how he's responding to it.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, he's got
because
that gift.
He's a meditator.
Yeah.
He's been meditating for a long time. It's all of, see, and the thing is, behind all this is the meditation discipline practice of just sitting with yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking
Sitting
if there's
with yourself.
Yeah,
what's the Pascal quote?
The Pascal
it's like
quote,
all of humanity's troubles are due to man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Yeah, just try to sit there.
Yeah, 10 minutes just by yourself.
And let your mind assassinate
Say-
yourself too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's one thing that I've learned in meditation. Like when you first start a discipline daily, when I first started, it was like maybe a minute or two, right? And I would just get into like some bullshit thing that I got to do, and then that would propel me out of the meditation, and I'd go do it, right? Yeah. But then over time, you just, you go a little bit longer and a little bit longer, and then you get to a like kind of a stasis, like a good spot that kind of fits in your day, and it becomes easier. But at first, it can be pretty
it's
brutal.
fascinating
Yeah,
how
it's
one
brutal.
of the most difficult things for people to do is nothing.
Yeah, just sitting.
Just sitting in a room.
And the more you sit in the same place every day, it just keeps storing more and more energy. It's like if you have a discipline of meditation, sit in that same spot on a daily basis and keep sitting there. And eventually it stores an energetic field for you to just sit. Like today I was in Ojai and I took my friend Gunnar to the Krishnamurti to his house. Krishnamurti was a great meditator, and
hung out in Ojai.
you can go in his living room and sit and meditate.
Oh, that's cool.
Like they got meditation where he hung out, and you sit and you can feel a veil of energy that just all of a sudden you're just relaxed because it's just storing all this energy from probably years,
of people going there and doing that.
People
right?
going there
Yeah.
and then just him alone.
Like the
probably
cave
meditating.
thing, right? Like the cave, like the the
Yeah,
place it's
the
like
ashram.
yeah,
The cave thing. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, any of these, like, the Ramakrishna Monastery in Tribuca Canyon, they've got that parabolic dome. I would go up there and I started sitting for 30 minutes. And then I'd go, next week I started, monthly I started pushing it for an hour. Then I'd start pushing 2 hour sits in that thing. And sitting for 2 hours, it's like, wow. Like, and the 2 hours sometimes would go by and like, it felt like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've had that experience too.
I mean, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about the sitting butt naked on dirt?
On
Have
dirt?
you heard of that? That's like a trendy thing right now. You haven't heard of that? There's this thing where you like go and you just like take off all your clothes and you just sit in the dirt and you meditate.
I don't know. I've already seen a scorpion in my house. I don't know if you see some of those sadhus in India though. They do hang out in those caves. They got scorpions walking around.
Yeah.
Maybe snakes come in. It's
Right,
like,
and there's gnarly snakes out there and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I mean,
I can't remember what guy is.
What
but
do you,
that's like a trendy
what do you
thing.
wear in the cold plunge?
I wear boxers.
yeah.
And I hang them out to dry. I have
Why,
a clothes
why
line.
don't you just
But you're
go
at
for
Well,
it?
your
because
own
I
house.
have a daughter that her room is right there,
Oh yeah.
and my wife. I'm
fair.
not gonna let old Peter swing around too much. She's at that
Just
age.
being respectful.
Yeah, it's a respectful thing. But I have done it naked, like when they haven't been here, and that is there is a different trip to that.
I know.
It is weird,
Yeah.
right? And I'll do it when I go to the river too. I'll like, because the river's kind of you can't really see too good into it, especially with the snow runoff. I just did a bunch of cold plunges in Kennedy's actually.
Yeah.
And it was all snow runoff, and I think it was like 33 degrees. It was free. It was really gnarly, and I went bare ass, like 4 a.m. when
Yeah.
nobody's around, and
It hits different.
it does hit a little different. It's more of like, the best way I can describe it is like, when you jump off a cliff, like if you have the dream of jumping off a cliff and you fall for affinity basically, and then you'll wake up, right? It's like that. It's like fully giving yourself to the cold, which you could translate that to like fully giving yourself, your entire body, all your senses to the power.
Yeah.
There's nothing in between me and that. And maybe we should do saunas naked then. But
Yeah.
you can do them naked in a
That's why
public gym.
That's why you got to build your own.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna
But
build
you
my own.
could
You sent me the link on that. I'm gonna do that 8-man one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it right out there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm gonna cycle.
But technically, you think it would be okay just to go in there?
Like
because you can be naked in the locker room. The sauna's in the locker room.
you just be butt naked
gender
with just a
specific.
bunch of dudes. Well, we saw a guy last week.
We did. Here it
No,
comes.
this is a
Hand
good one.
towels.
This is a
Okay,
good one.
we can end with this.
So this is a good one. So you'll like this. So we're in. So
This will
get-
really wrap everything up. It'll
we-
summarize everything we've been talking about really
for
nicely.
sure, for sure.
Tighten it up.
Yeah.
So we go every Wednesday to Gold's Gym and TO with a bunch of dudes after our meeting, and we call it the Hot Sauna Boys, right? It's like a crew, and if we want to make it PR for the wife, and it's just the Hot Sauna Boys, right? That's
Right.
the short, but there's also we add the F word
Right.
to add a little extra,
Yeah.
right? And we're all sitting in there. We all get into the sauna. And it's like, what was it, like 10 of us maybe? We fill the whole room. And there's this guy in the shower, and he's butt naked, and he's showering, and he turns around.
The
and
sauna is sort of situated so you can see through the glass
into
and to where the showers are. And there's a row of showers that have curtains that you pull.
Right.
Right.
And this guy had his curtain
Open.
opened, and probably on purpose.
That's our
He had-
suspicion.
He had this giant ring on his. Like a
his
shiny-
all of the equipment was like through it.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
through this ring, and the shiny object caught my eyes, and we started all staring at him, and we're all looking through this door, like all getting a peep, and you could tell he was kind of like, he started kind of like prostrating towards us a little, like, hey, look at me, you know, like, look what I got. And there was this little voice inside of my head. I don't know if it was the stale small voice. It might have been something else.
I think it probably was.
It probably was,
Yeah.
but I probably should have done this. But I was going to pop open the door and be like, hey, brother, tell me about that.
Right.
You know, that
would have been a creative act.
It would have been
if you hadn't obeyed fear.
There would be no fear. You should have.
Right,
Yeah.
I know, and there was fear, and I was like, nah, because how if he's like a homosexual and he's gonna, you know, like, I'm not, and that might not be a good thing to do. I think
you listened.
I listened to my self-talking mind.
Yeah.
And the fear.
That's all false.
But like, I could have found out something, but we were all. I mean, for a while, we were staring at this guy with this like giant silver ring.
He was a little show,
and it was the wildest thing. And I don't even know what's the point of those things, because I had a piercing there back in the day before I got sober,
right?
And there's a purpose for that.
Prince Albert?
No, I had an ambulog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the straight bar through.
Yeah.
I went full fledged, and then when I got struck with sobriety, that lasted for 5 minutes, and I was like, I don't need this crap, but that serves a purpose, though.
It's kind of like your butterfly story, in a way, right?
Well, I mean, you could have asked him, like, hey,
I know.
If
I see him again,
can you raise it? And then, if it raised, then you knew you're on your path.
Yeah, like
you could have said, try to bring it down, and then, but subconsciously.
Subconsciously.
Yeah. Not like literally.
Yeah. And I think we're going to find that guy, and I'm going to ask him. Eventually, because I'm sure he's going to be back. Because it looked like he was having a fun time. Because all the boys were taking a peep. But over and over and over again. It was a really, and I just don't understand. Like, I know I've heard the term ring before, but I don't know what they're for.
So, like, if you want to get in the comments and explain to us, we really want to know.
Yeah, that's a. Well, I gotta say, I was at a convention this weekend, right? A 12-step convention.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of people. You know that I talked to a lot of people, and I'm walking with my wife to go do a meeting, and this guy's over here. He kind of looks like a little yogi, and he's like, "Hey, God, you look so cool." I think I was wearing all white, and I was like, "Oh, right on, we're going to over here. You want to come with us?" So you follow him in, and we sit down, and then my wife's sitting here, and I'm in the middle, and then he's here, and then my Anna gets up to go to the bathroom. She goes, "I'll be right back." I go, "Okay," and he turns to me, and I said something about some spiritual stuff, and he kind of got in a little debate, and I was like, I didn't really get into it most with him, and then he turns to me and goes, "You're just dressed so sexy in that white," and I just went, I just went left field, you know what I mean? Because I just am a male, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to, I didn't know what to say to him, except all I knew was that it was about to start, and all of a sudden it was like if there was a steel wall, it just went up like this, and all of a sudden the guy, like, he wasn't even in my presence anymore. I don't even think I would have gave him the time. It made me uncomfortable.
Interesting.
It really did. And, and then we left, and again, the tongue has three gatekeepers, right? So I had I said, it just felt, and I told Anna that, and I said, it made me really comfortable. And then she said that he said something to her, like a comment like that, but I didn't hear.
He was trying to get you both.
Oh.
Yeah, so
get a double
doubler. Yeah.
There was some weird vibe there. I was like, whoa,
But that desert powwow is it is a sexual kind of event.
It is?
Yeah. When back in the day,
that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
The whole recovery thing is a front.
Dude.
No, I'm telling you, the shit that
You didn't know
the shit that went down there when I 19 years ago.
Yeah.
With all the Orange County boys, all the boys
There was a lot of Orange County boys,
right. It's a main vein for that, right? And we would all go there, young and crazy and sober, and it was like we go to the Agua Caliente to gamble, right? Because we weren't super spiritually fit, but we're on our path, right?
Time,
yeah, progress not perfection, right?
Right.
And it was like a whole get down for years. That was my first retreats until our group, until I went on the real, with the boys and Sierra retreat.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's different I mean,
were you hanging out by the pool in the middle
no,
of
we
the day?
stayed across the street.
Oh, okay. See, that's where the sexual stuff happens. It's the pool. It's the.
That's where it always starts, in the pool.
Yeah, and they have that nice pool it's at the Marriott, right?
It was at the Renaissance.
Is that the same place? Maybe maybe they changed, because they had the sand beach.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's the same place, and it's like sex. I mean, people are like going back and forth to the hotel rooms.
God.
Yeah. Because I mean, what else are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, like get sober and like help people and expand your.
I know. But
I know.
You wouldn't do that.
It's hard to get past bathing suits, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're young.
It's not that hard.
Well, I was at the men's stag in the morning. I heard this guy talk about dying to ego, and then he gives this great speech about dying to ego, and he's like, I got the St. Francis prayer tattooed on my back.
Damn.
And I was like, that guy's kind of cool. I want to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I went up to him. I was like, hey, I really like what you said. And, he said about 3 words, and I went, okay, it's not going the direction
Is
I was.
a different person than
it's the same guy, but I was waiting for this. I was ready to get into a spiritual dialogue.
Didn't want to go there.
It wasn't even. It was like, it wasn't even on the same plane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What came out of his mouth and my expectations. And then even my wife said, like, you ran into the guy the St. Francis prayer was. I was like, the tongue's got 3 gatekeepers. It's all I've been practicing, the gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers.
Is it true? Is it kind of necessary? It's like, all I said, my expectations were let down. You know what I mean? I don't know what else to say. Like.
Or I'm not judging. I'm just observing.
No, but I've been practicing that though. I mean, that's a great one. It's an Arab proverb, So
the tongue has 3 gatekeepers.
Yes.
And say that again.
Is it kind?
Is it kind?
Is it necessary?
Is it necessary?
Is it
Wait,
true?
excuse me. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Interesting.
So it should be all 3 things if it's going to make it through the gatekeepers.
Yeah. So think about that. So when you're talking to people, right?
Right.
Is this true? Is it kind what I'm about to say? And is it even necessary? And if you think about it, we have nothing almost to even talk about it anymore, because most of the dialogue is about some kind of interaction of blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe putting someone down, judging them. It's
right. Gossip is the worst form of the human language. That's an old one, too.
Yeah. Spiritual disciplines, it starts to restrain. Like your buddy tonight, I was joking with him about the swearing. I was like, try to go 30 days without swearing.
Who, Buttman?
No, Ross.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I'm trying to go 30 days. I said, nothing. I'm not trying to judge you. I said, try to go 30 days without using a swear word.
What do you think about that?
He kind of giggled.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to get on that plane.
But it's...
Because I cuss
you have
like
a
sailor.
daughter.
I know, but I still... I don't cuss around her, but things have slipped, right? And I think that's something...
But if you're going to say there's a such thing as emotional sobriety...
Right.
Why not the character start playing the role, what it's portraying? And portraying is, speaking with dignity, speaking with self-respect.
Right.
We're so easy to use these vocabulary that just makes us sound very uneducated, right? And not that I'm saying I'm so educated, but the minute it's been 8 years since I stopped. Like, I literally made a conscious decision to stop swearing. And what that did is I slowed my vocabulary down. Like, I talk slower.
Right.
Because you know what I mean? Use the F-bomb in your sentence. You can say a whole speech in 4 minutes. Blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's like so easy to do that.
Right.
But if you're conscious of your wording,
right.
how you speak, and honestly, does it make us look tough to talk like that? Like, for some reason we think it's like a tough, or like people are going to relate to us better.
Well, there's a actual philosophy about cuss words that's kind of interesting. I think who's that one guy who he has an essay about like, you know how the Valley Girl like, like I went to the store and like.
Is it John McWhorter?
It's John McWhorter. I think he's got something on fuck, actually, the word, and how it's.
Osho actually has a famous little YouTube viral video where he talks about the word fuck and how great it is.
He does. That's right.
Yeah.
He does. It's more descriptive than what you can.
He goes on all the different meanings that it can have.
Right.
By saying it
one
in different
word
contexts.
has all these different
It
meanings.
just goes on and on and on. And you hear people laughing in the background.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not coming from a self-righteous place. It's coming from a place of being aware of how you speak.
No. I agree with you.
Right?
Jordan Peterson talks about
discipline.
that too. Yeah, it's another discipline. And the Dalai Lama, where I think there's a famous interview he's asked about like listening, and he talks about true listening is there's no talking over each other. It's like you finish your thought and your speech, and then I digest it a little bit, and then I respond, right? And I'm not responding from a place of trying to overcome you or, get points. It's just I'm truly taking in what you're saying, digesting it, and it will slow down your speech, like what you're talking about. If you really are intentional with your words, like Jordan Peterson's famous line, you talk a lot slower. You're right. And it's funny because when I'm in the mode of not trying to talk slower, I talk better. I don't talk like a dipshit, Yeah. But when I get all uppity, it's this, it's that, it's and it's like I'm all in this nervous way.
But it's also a discipline to start reprogramming your own
reconditioning yourself,
right?
Yeah, you're right.
It's like, and again, anything you put into that consciousness, you have a choice. It's all free will. You have a choice to see what you watch on social media, what you watch on YouTube, what you read,
what movies you watch, what art you engage with. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's
so,
true.
I mean, how many people are ready to put their entire 24 hours on all spirituality?
Right.
Like from the minute you wake up, doing prayer, yoga, meditation.
Just do it one day.
One day, 24 hours.
No breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what you do.
That's my life.
Yeah, that's your life.
But for the
and I
average
think that's what
person,
makes you
like
such a fascinating person, right? Like it's
not in my
there is an
nature.
energy. There, it's funny. It's funny. I noticed this at the get together we had tonight because you guys were running late,
right?
And like timeliness in that group is like,
Yeah.
if you were part of that group, like you would have been called. Like it would have been like, why were you late?
Yeah.
Like we'll ask dudes that as soon as they walk in the door.
Right.
Like what the fuck? Is this not a priority?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think there's something to that too, right? Like it's good. It's that discipline thing. Like punctuality is important, right? But even when you walked in late, that you have like an aura about you that's like soft. Even though like you would look at like you, right, and it would be like, oh man, this dude's a kind of scary dude, right? He's got the tattoo, all that. But there's like a softening that you have that comes before you, and I've noticed that over the years too, of like more of that. Because back in the day, it was spiritual warrior. Oh, yeah. You remember that? Like, and it was leaning towards manicism, kind of, right? But it's not like that anymore. It's a crazy radical change. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a little bit of that, but I got a lot of work to do.
Again, it's going back to this thing about discipline.
I've got a lot of work to do too.
Well, no, but you he's a really good orator, right? You don't do the like when you're in a thought. You're expressing the thought, which is what talking is. Mm-hmm. It comes out in a way that people just they gravitate towards, and it's like I'm in awe of that.
It is fascinating to be able to. It takes a certain degree of intentionality to be able to speak in a way where someone will listen.
Yeah,
right.
There's a different force you put behind your words that can command attention.
Right.
It's different than otherwise we're sort of talking to ourselves kind of anxiously. And people can't hear that the same way than if you are making a decision to talk to them.
And truly listen.
And that's just it's a shift. It's hard to explain. It's just it's a shift of our attention or something. But it has an impact. It has a real impact.
And it's, in spiritual terminology, right? In some of the philosophy, it's called siddhas, right? You gain these powers, charm,
charisma,
stuff that and it's, it's not like it can be used in a weapon or it can be used in a gift, right? And the thing is, when you go in and present yourself into a large amount of people, it's like, if there's not weight and depth and truth behind that, we lose attention really quick, right? Because people know that you're
full of it.
Yeah. It's easy to tell the story. And most human beings, and I say this, and I do believe this, most human beings are so caught into self that most of the conversations that you have with a lot of human beings, it'll be all about them. Constantly, and that's what the two-way dialogue would always be, right? People that are truly listeners or people that are spiritually disciplined, like they can take in all that, maybe that self-centeredness, but then they also can process it, and maybe they don't even need to speak. That person needed a dump on you, and I find a lot of that, like, and it's okay, like, because I feel grounded enough in my own being that maybe I'm just there to hold space for people, just to let the information out. And it's usually all about them. I mean, if I ever write a book, it's going to be on self-centeredness. That's honestly, like, I just think it's one of our biggest character defects in society today, Yeah. So, but that's a whole nother
bag of worms
to get into, right? But if we can get more out of self, though, we can be more present with other beings, and to me, that's another gift, right? Just holding space for people, being able to listen,
to connect with someone, in a different way. You're not just hearing your thoughts about what they're saying. You're actually making an effort to see them, hear them, in a meaningful way. It's a beautiful experience.
It is. I mean, that's a gift. If you can look past, because most of the time this is doing all the talking anyway. If you go past what this is telling them, and you look past into their soul, or like in their heart, deep down that desire, there's always someone that needs to be loved, right? Or wanted.
It is a funny thing to say, to look past them into their heart. It's all, you can't talk about these things without slipping into imagery and metaphor, but what is that really? How do you look into someone's heart? Where's that happening?
Because they're speaking through their conscious mind. The conscious mind is doing the dialogue. But if it gets behind that, you know what I mean? The heart is something that, the heart, is another brain muscle. It can't lie. Like, it's true.
There was this woman that I encountered for a period of time, and that image of Christ with like the burning heart. She said that she made a practice out of visualizing that everyone with that.
Yeah.
Especially if they were someone who she found to be like repugnant or
repulsive.
Yeah.
Right.
And she would consciously imagine them having that burning heart, Jesus's burning heart in their chest, and I felt that.
Yeah. Or Ram Dass would say, picture everybody in drag,
Yeah, God in drag.
God in drag. I love that.
Yeah.
So, again, it's all going to come down to each individual, as all of us, right? It's all that self-awareness, self-awakening. Like, we all have the choice to do that. And it's like, will that little voice call someone? I think sometimes in the darkness, that little voice does call us and gives us an opportunity to like get out of that darkness and back into the light. And when you're in the light, it's like all you want to do is give everyone else the light. You know what I mean? Like,
I want everybody else to go into the cold plunge.
Yeah.
To experience what I experience.
They do.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, mandatory.
Yeah.
To suffer like you suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to transcend that, like to get that feeling.
Transcend the suffering.
That can be a frustrating thing when like there's some, like, that this is the right medicine for a person and they just won't take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To each their own, thy will not mine be done. But you know what I mean? Like, there is that selfishness that creeps in and you're like, fuck, why doesn't this guy get it? He's killing himself.
Where that intrinsic motivation comes from is a strange
But
mystery.
what happens if the priority here is that our whole earning is to be one with God?
Right.
Like, everything else is secondary. Just like in a 12-step program, it's like the sobriety, or, that's the number one. You need to put that ahead of everything, right? Well, after you transcend that phase, what about everything is about God, and we do everything for God, and it's all about, everything is to God, like literally, and everything else is secondary. What happens if that's truly the assignment here?
Yeah, it probably is.
I mean,
yeah,
everything else is secondary.
Right.
And you know what I mean? For centuries, they're all saying the same thing.
Right.
I mean,
it doesn't matter where you go. When you go back to antiquity, it's all pointing towards that.
it's all God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's likely that that's probably the case, that is true. And I think I'm going to start tomorrow.
We can start tonight, though.
That's my point.
I mean, cold plunge. I mean, I'll be leaving. I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool realm to explore. Just the language thing, not cussing. Being very intentional with your words, no matter what. Yeah, and I can see how that can transcend into a superpower.
It's another spiritual discipline,
right? And
all
it's
of it
easy.
becomes.
It's like cold showers, right? Everybody can take a cold shower.
Right.
You can. You could be poor. You can be a millionaire. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you can get there.
And then the one to leave you on, though, think about it. If all of a sudden you have this yearning to seek God, right? Is it not God seeking itself?
Right. God's happening to you, right? If you allow.
Where's that seeking coming from?
Right.
Is that like you're not trained to do that?
Right.
You're not taught to do that. I mean, maybe in an organized religion, but it's still someone else's doctrine. It's not the yearning from inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is secondary. Like my relationship with God is always going to be number one. There's nothing more important than that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's heavy.
God becoming conscious of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In human form, And then you have to deal with being human. Like, does the ego start building? Do you start having all these people think that you have all the answers?
Yeah.
Which happens to a lot of people too. It's a very mystical journey.
Yeah.
It is indeed. Yeah. Well, Mikey, thank you very much
for coming
out.
Mikey.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
Yeah,
God bless.
Yeah. See ya.